Hello, everyone. Happy weekend, whichever day you happen to be on, depending on your side of the planet. It's good to have everybody here. I am, as always, joined by the wondrous Mark Reid.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks, Ember. Yeah, fantastic. It's still early, but I'm all in. I'm here for it. My body and mind are ready. Absolutely ready. Let's go. Let's
Hell
go.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I put some post up and I was being a bit facetious, but I think I might be right. I put up that, like, let's get together and laugh at the worst creationist debater in the history of the world is how I described Hovind. I think I might be right.
You're not wrong. You are not.
Yeah. That's absolutely fair. And we once again are joined by our bonus co-host for this particular debate, Dr. Ian Chen.
Hey, Dr. Ember. Hey, Dr. Mark Reid. Hey, audience. How you doing, guys? Love being here.
Chen.
That's right. And it's actually true. Ian's doctorate is exactly as valid as Kent Hovind's, and I love it.
Oh, I think all three of us have exactly as, valid doctorates as Kent Hovind. Not to mean your doctorate any doctor.
But he's got 4 more than us. So all of us combined will still 1 less than him. He's got 4.
Well, that's not accurate, but that's a whole other discussion.
I think 2 of them he gave himself was what I heard.
Oh,
2 of them he bestowed himself.
Like Carl Baugh, who just gave himself. I love it. Why not?
I wasn't aware you could do that.
Sure. In fact, we can hand out doctorates. For example, right now, since we're in a new month, I can do the thing that YouTube lets us creators do, and I can just hand out 5 PhDs to people in the live chat right now, and those went to Jenemu, D. Murphy, Raya, Bent, and Mapleson. Congratulations, folks. Enjoy all your custom emojis, and remember to enter all your live chats with the proper appellation, Doctor.
Yeah, nice. And that's a doctorate in emberology. I just have to say, there's a doctorate in emberology. Very important. Yeah. Absolutely.
And we're joined by all the wonderful people in the live chat. If you're watching this later, this is a live, Scott, yes. But if you're watching this later, be sure to subscribe, ring the little bell, join us in a future live chat. Mark and I take turns. Every other week we're over here. On the opposite week, we're over on Mark's channel. And join us on both, because we have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, I think that's Marty, you're already a doctor. I see you've got the little member icon next to your name. So yeah, congratulations. You've been promoted. Oh goodness. All right, so we this is a part 2. We're partway through. The wonderful Pragmatic Crystal has already posted a link to part 1. And
thanks.
Yeah, PC's always on it, always way ahead of us. But we're at about halfway through. Would you care to summarize your thoughts on our story thus far for anyone who? Yeah, it's been a long week for a lot of us, so a brief
Yeah.
recap may be called for.
Yeah, so I mean, we've gotten two different debates over the last few days, and it's Ken Hovind's. We did one with Godless Engineer before this, and Kent Hovind has not changed in the slightest in what he said and things like that. I like what Ian's done. He's come from it as, well, the Bible actually proves evolution, which is just, if nothing else, it's hilarious to see Kent's reaction. He doesn't know how to react to it because it doesn't fit into his script, which is actually hilarious. Like, because he's sitting there going, "Oh, that's ridiculous," but he doesn't have that. He doesn't have a pre-scripted response to it, so he doesn't really know what to say to that, which I found absolutely hilarious. Yeah, I don't know. It's from Kent's side, it's exactly the same as every other debate, but ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't change. So if I can give a quick summary. So I in this debate, I presented 4 so-called evidence, for evolution or common descent. The first 2, as kind of Mark highlighted, was very much theologically based. So it was around saying, well, here's evidence that the Bible proves abiogenesis happened. Here's evidence that the Bible says evolution happened. And he didn't touch any of that. He kept on talking about, I think, kinds and sorts or whatever. So he went to what he thought, maybe what he was comfortable with, but he never addressed any of those 2 arguments. So we kind of left that. I think we're pretty much halfway through. The next 2 is really around the topics Mark has debated this with not just Rock Hard Kent, but with a whole bunch of other creationists as well. But we go through chromosome fusion 2. We go through ERVs and ALU elements, etc. for the last 2 parts of my evidence. But I'd like to try to do things differently. Like, I'm not a scientist. Like, I've got a master's in business, and I don't really have any science education at all. And I know Mark doesn't either, but Mark's more well-rounded this. But Mark, if you listen, guys, and I think everyone here has seen Mark debate, but if you listen to Mark kind of debate the science, he's very articulate. He's very good at kind of explaining the science. I'm nowhere near as good as Mark on this. So I try to find a slightly different angle. And in the chromosome fusion 2, it wasn't about explaining the evidence for chromosome fusion 2. It was basically saying, and you'll listen to this as we go through the debate, it was basically saying, well, you accept chromosome fusion in deers and stuff as a deer kind, so why don't you accept it for humans and apes? So it's more like saying, forget the evidence on why there's a chromosome fusion 2. It's saying, well, you accept it for here, but you don't accept it for here. Why is that? And then when I kind of go through ERVs and stuff, it wasn't around, well, ERVs, this is what it is, and it appears here, and there's strong evidence for human evolution, because that goes into the science that eventually I might get caught up on. I'm not that strong in that science there. So my evidence on ERVs were, well, why is it that humans, chimps, and gorillas have ERVs that are just so similar? And we're not talking about 1 or 2 ERVs. We're talking about thousands. And then look at ALU elements where there's 1 million of them. And then look at line elements where there are 800,000 of them. And the question is not about what they are, is about why we have, why they're all similar unless it's common descent. So what's your argument, Ken? God create them that way? Why? Because none of them are functional. Did they become degenerate? Well, why did they become degenerate in exactly the same spots across millions of these elements? So it became a question around, why are they similar as opposed to what they are? So I try to stay away from a lot of the what kind of questions. Got to figure, people like Mark and stuff have done that, and they've done it well. And also it's because I'm not very strong at that kind of stuff, and try to argue a little bit of a different, perspective on using those kind of evidence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, they take a long time to explain as well. That's something I have noticed in a debate. Like, if you're going to explain ERVs exactly, it takes a long time. So I think that may be a really good idea to sort of skip because everybody sort of has seen the debates that they sort of explain it, or they can look up what they are. The question is, and it seems to be this idea of, especially with the chromosome 2 fusion, that they readily accept sort of chromosome fusions in all, like you had the deer as an example, like they have wildly varying amounts of chromosomes in the deer kind. So obviously, it's not a kind under their definition because they can't mate with one another. But sort of when you have all of these fusions, it seems like there's sort of special pleading for humans. Well, humans are a special thing, like all of this fusions in deer is natural, but humans are different. We're special, and we don't see any reason to think that's the case.
And they can't explain why it's different. And the funny thing is, listen to what Ken says. Eventually, he just says, "I don't think a chromosome fusion happens." Like, eventually, he just dismisses the entire argument and goes, "I don't know." Like, if you listen to him, he goes, "I don't know that there's a fusion." In other words, when you pin him down with saying there's a fusion, this is why it's different chromosomes, and you say it's a deer kind, his explanation is to basically wipe the entire evidence off the board and basically say, I don't think there's a fusion. Like, he just hand waves the whole thing away. It's like he did the same thing with ERVs. Like, why are they so similar? Oh, I can't remember what he said there, but he just hand waved the whole thing. Like, I don't believe it. That is his default on anything when he's caught. It's like, I don't believe the evidence. It's all wrong. That's it. He just hand waves the whole thing away. So yeah, and that's a really good position to sort of trap him in, because you're like, well, you're claiming to be the expert. You're claiming to be no more than the experts. Doctorate, remember, Mark? He's a doctor 4 times. He's
a very learned man. I
taught science for 15 years. Okay, buy my DVDs.
So this is the thing when you like, and saying that I don't know is fine, but he's sort of saying I don't know, but it's not a problem. Like when in science we say, we don't know why something occurs, it's absolutely we should investigate it further. It's not, well, I don't know, but God just makes it work somehow. It'll all be sorted out. And the other thing that he does, which is just horrible when you really drill down and think about it, is when you do pin him, he will say, well, you'll find out after you die.
Yeah, he does.
It's just such a ridiculous thing to sort of, you're getting questioned of, well, we see all this evidence that point to common descent. How does that work in deer, and why do we see all the signs of this happening? And he's like, well, I don't know, but God will tell you after you die. It's such a, like, when you think about it, it's such a lame and ignorant response. Who says that? It's like he doesn't even want to know. It's sort of, I'll find out after I die.
I'll see the video in heaven. That's what he says. So I'll watch the video in heaven.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, but no one's coming back to tell the rest of us. It's kind of pointless for the people still here if you find out. It's not like you're going to be able to. Maybe someone with a Ouija board can find out exactly what's going on. Maybe that should be our new scientific standard. Just scientists with Ouija boards across the land. Just
a thought just occurred to me, and it's a little bit of a segue. But as you're talking about the heaven stuff, Mark, how he always says evolution is a religion. Someone should actually press him and ask him, well, if I pray to evolution, what will I get in my afterlife? Because isn't that one of the hallmarks of religion, is that there's an afterlife? I just say, great, tell me, if I pray to religion, what do I get? Like, do I go to heaven, hell? What's my afterlife? Because unless he can actually explain that there is some sort of afterlife or supernatural to evolution, then it's not a religion, is it? So it's just a thought that came to my head as you kind of talked about it, Mark.
Well, I mean, it depends how you're defining religion. That's
we define the way he defines it is just a belief. If I believe in anything, it's a religion.
Well, that means that the idea that my football team is the best is a religion, and that means that the idea that water is good for me is a religion, and that means I'm a member of 50 infinite religions of just what any I believe
religion. I believe Ken's an idiot, so that's religion.
That's a religion. I look both ways before crossing the road because I believe that's the safest. That's a religion. It's exactly. Sort of, it becomes nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense at that point.
It also never fails to amuse me how he uses religion as a pejorative when it's applied to evolution. Like, religion is bad. It's an obviously stupid thing.
No, it's ironic.
And then he turns around and goes, but I admit mine is a religion. So you're saying yours is a bad idea.
Exactly.
Good argument then, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost like that thing, never argue with an idiot because they'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. Kent Hovind, like, he's sort of just trying to drag what is absolutely a science down into the realm of, well, it's a religious belief within our society. And we don't put science in that category, but he just wants to, he's in science denial. That's all it is.
Yeah. All right. Shall we dig in here?
Was this where we're at?
Approximately. We were at 40:29, but I figured a couple seconds before won't hurt.
No, we're just finishing the theological evidence part.
Yeah. I feel like this should be a different dimension. Yeah. Let's bigify that. There we go. There we go. That's pretty. Okay.
Happens in Australia. I will try to fix that for you for the Australians. I'll help them. Okay. We'll get my material translated into Australian. Okay. No, I did not. The Bible does not say. You asked, what are you reading wrong? Okay. Look at the verse, the top one. Let the earth bring forth living creature after his kind, and then it keeps going. Cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth. It does not say it's one common ancestor. He's making all the various kinds of animals right
after
here.
his kind. So I read that as he bring forth the living creature and examples. And you can read that literally and go, well, all he's actually brought forth is cattle, insects, and one beast of the earth. If I read that literally, it doesn't say bring forth a tiger, a lion, or it only talks about one kind. So explain to me why, if the Bible is so accurate and it's the perfect word of God, it's always in the singular.
Ian.
Yep.
Listen to me. You're doing exactly what you did a year ago. You're off topic. You are supposed to give evidence for how we have a common ancestor. I don't have to defend the Bible.
but you're doing that with the Bible.
Exactly. So he never answered it. So the point here was, I mean, if you're going to literally read the Bible, if you're going to tell me King James Version, and particularly Genesis in King James Version, is to be read literally and all the other stuff is poetic or whatever, then I'm reading this literally. So let the earth bring forth the living creature. It's not creatures, it's creature after his kind. In other words, I said to Ken, that's evolution. You've created a Luca and everything basically evolved from that single kind. So, and if you really want to, like, if he said read on, said fine. He created one living creature, he created one cattle, he created one creeping thing, and he created he created 4 animals. So if you want to read it literally, because what he said, read on, I said, okay, I can read on. I took that to be examples, but if you wanted to read on literally, then he created 4 kinds. That's it. It doesn't say he created tigers or lions, all that kind of stuff. So that's a literal reading of the Bible. I mean, prove me wrong, right? That was
and it's based on we see it's exactly the same kind of thinking as we see in the other part of Genesis, where Adam is created singular, and then Yahweh has to make Eve out of Adam because everything is created as a single thing.
Yep,
but
exactly.
I love that you've trapped Kent into, like, you can't go to another version of the Bible or anything like that. You've basically asked him if the KJV is the inerrant word of God. Like, it's just like he's got to, and I mean, he can just sort of say, hey, I'm reading that as meaning multiple, but you've already asked him whether you should take it literally as true. And because he's a fundamentalist, of course the man said yes.
And Mark, I had a slide prepared exactly for that. There is I can't remember, it was a slide, and there's a passage in the Bible where it says, if you add to God's word, then God will add plagues and all these torture stuff to you. Basically, it's basically saying don't add extra to what God is saying, otherwise God will add these punishments to you. So I was waiting for him to kind of say, well, all this stuff. Then I'd say, you're adding to God's word, and I was going to put up this Bible verse that basically says, well, it looks like you're going to go to hell. So but he didn't go there, so I didn't actually put that up.
Maybe that's why I went to prison. He added to God's word, and that was the punishment. Maybe
it's been known to happen. That's been coming up a lot lately as I've been researching into mythicism and all that sort of stuff. the fact that they had to add a section to Revelation saying, hey, stop messing with the verses,
Yeah.
but it itself is an alteration to the scripture.
Yes.
It tickles me.
The irony is palpable. I mean, it really is. It's just, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bible at all. You're way
So you
off
can't
topic.
defend this?
You're trying.
Can I just add something quickly?
Yeah,
So
sure.
No.
I really think, okay. Really, the whole thing about this is that, and something I've realized over watching a couple of these in a row is that it's kind of like, I mean, it's not a Mott and Bailey kind of thing, but it's kind of this tactic that Kent's got. He will use the Bible as evidence, but then when you press him on that evidence, he will like say, well, that's not what the debate's about. I don't have to defend it, kind of thing. They're usually in a debate, you're kind of opening the door if you're using that as evidence in your debate. Like you should be held to have to defend what it is that you're presenting, either on the for side or the against side. So I really find it objectionable that he brings his religion into it. He uses that as a shield and uses the Bible as a sword, trying to attack your arguments with the Bible. But then when pushed on it, he goes, no, I don't have to defend that. I don't have to touch that. It's like, well, then you have to stop bringing it into the debate. If you open the door, you should have to talk about it. And I think we should, as debaters, sort of keep to that. It would be like me bringing up evolution as a, sort of a reason why, Christianity is wrong, or fundamentalist Christianity is wrong. And when somebody says, well, evolution couldn't have happened, me going, well, I don't have to defend evolution.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's actually a fairly, it's a defensible position to say that, because it is settled science.
Right.
But,
right.
It's no fun that way, though.
Yeah.
You're trying to shift.
You want me to move on because you can't.
No.
Just say you can't defend
it,
and I'll move on. No problem.
Just say you're an idiot and you can't stay on topic. Why don't you? Okay. You're supposed to prove we have a common ancestor. I don't have to prove the Bible at all. So quit trying to change the burden of proof. And you did the same.
It was at this point, Dr. Ember and Dr. Mark, when he started calling me idiot, I kind of went, okay, that's fine. Because I was warned in the beginning to kind of be nice to him. So I only maybe threw one or two little jabs. After this, I just went, okay, bugger it. Yep. I'll be rude. Yeah.
Yep,
no, that's
on
fair.
now.
He just called you an idiot, Dr. Ian. Yeah. How rude. how disrespectful.
That's
of your
an ad hominem. An ad hominem.
Mm-hmm.
It is. But see, as I said to Dr. Ian, like when Kent says don't do ad hominems, don't insult, he's not talking about him. Like his brain is so I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. That's not what my degree is in emberology. Well, yes. It's really that like these narcissistic traits that when he's saying, oh, this is unacceptable, like his perspective is it's unacceptable for it to happen to me, but I'm allowed to do it. Like I don't know where somebody gets to that point where they're like, well, don't insult, don't, only one topic at a time, and then proceeds to do exactly what they've demanded you don't. And they don't see a problem with it. That's fine.
Yeah, I think you said the word there, narcissistic. That's exactly him, because he will never admit when he's wrong either. And that's why I think one of the characteristics of narcissistic people. They're never wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a current orange bloviating idiot that is also has that trait.
Yep.
Have you guys seen The Apprentice?
I haven't. I had no wish to watch that show in the first place. I'm not a huge fan of reality TV and
no, not the TV show, the movie.
Oh, the movie. No, I haven't. Yeah. No, I haven't.
I wasn't really. I wasn't. So a bit of a segue. I wasn't really interested in it until I read that Trump hated it. And if you actually watch it, it puts him in a very bad light. Like apparently he raped his ex-wife.
That's been a story around for a while, actually.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but apparently there was they were alluding to intimacy between him and Roy Cohn, who was apparently homosexual. So they didn't say it outright, but they were intimating it, right? So you can see why he would hate that movie, and it was hilarious.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I haven't watched. I haven't watched it either. I was busy doing the other Trump movie that came out, the Christian nationalist one.
Yeah.
We did a breakdown on that over on Skeptic Haven last weekend, I want to say. It's the days are all blurring together on me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds compelling, the whole thing with Roy Cohn and all of that, and I just don't have time to watch stuff really. But I may make a point of it just so I can dunk on the dictator in chief before he assumes office and criminalizes that. You know. But we do digress.
Yes.
So
Sorry.
it took you what, hour
Oh,
and
good.
10 minutes
Thanks
last
for
time.
calling me an idiot, Kent. Look, I'm not
I'm
saying
sorry.
you're the most
Maybe
stupidest
there's a
person in the
more
world, but
appropriate
you better
word,
hope
okay.
that person doesn't die. All right. So, all right.
What?
Let me move on. Let me move
Please
on.
do. Back to the topic,
Okay.
please.
And
Where am I?
let me say, I'm going to jump in now, just because I allowed that to flow for 12 minutes.
Okay.
But since we did hit the 12-minute mark, I want to make sure we're utilizing as much of
I'm happy with this back and
remaining,
forth.
just as much as
Yeah,
the remaining
sorry.
time to directly engage the question of tonight. So let me just pull it up and remind you guys. So the question for tonight is this: does common descent explain the origin of the species? So let's do it as much as we can. Let's focus on.
And where were you on that insult, Donnie? Where were you on that insult? Where was your mute button and your sense of outraged, sensibilities on that one when the good Australian doctor is insulted? No, that doesn't warrant a stoppage of the procedures. No, of course not.
Well, we know Donnie loves his rescue devices, as he likes to put it.
Yeah, and I'm saying my best evidence is Kent's Bible himself. And I made sure to kind of say, well, what is the KJV the correct version? Should we take Genesis literally? And Kent confirm all that stuff. So I am reading the Bible, the KJV version, as literally as possible. And this is my conclusion. And Kent won't defend it. What I'm hearing from him is he's putting it back on me. He's running away as he did last year with the whole thing on selling paradox. So that's fine, Kent. We can move on. But my evidence is the Bible. And to me, when I read that literally, it says one kind. It doesn't say several kinds. It doesn't say 1,000 kinds. It says one kind. And what is one kind if not last universal common ancestor? And let me tell you, where in the Bible that last universal common ancestor evolves into species. And I'll get to that next. So this will put a little bit more color to it, right? And that is, let me go through Genesis 6 and 19 and 20, because Ken always says that God asked 2 of every kind to be brought on this ark. And you know what, Ken? I cannot find this at all in the KJV. God did not ask for 2 of any kinds to come to the ark. God clearly states to bring 2 of every sort onto the ark. So then I have to ask myself, with a literal reading of the Bible, what the hell is a sort? What is a kind? Because when God in the Bible talks about kinds, he's talking about it in a creation context. The living creature after his kind, one singular, the beast of the earth after his kind. But when he talks about bringing the animals on the ark, he talks about sort. So I can only conclude that when the Bible talks about kind, it's talking about Luca, because it's talking about one kind. But by the time we got to Noah, that last universal common ancestor has evolved rapidly, but evolved to a lot of sorts, because then God says, bring 2 of every sorts onto the ark. Kent has always said 2 of every kinds. Tell me, where is that in the Bible? I mean, I'm looking at Genesis, and both of these passages here talk about sorts. What the hell is the difference between a kind? What is the difference between a sort? If not that a kind is Luca and
it's one thing, Dr. Ember and Dr. Mark, that I've kind of noticed. Like everyone talks about kinds, and if they're KJV, you look at the KJV in Genesis. Now I know later on in other passages, then Ken kind of mentions that they kind of interweave it a little bit, but we're talking Genesis, right? The apparently literal word of the Bible that you take literally. In Genesis, when it relates to Noah, it does not talk about bring kinds. It talks about sorts.
Right.
So if I were to literally look at that, I go, well, sorts and kind must be 2 different things. Otherwise, why doesn't he say kind? And why does he say bring 2 every kind? So these are the 2 relevant passages about the Noah story. And if you read that, it's talking about sort. So that's what I asked Ken, like, what the hell is a sort? You always say kinds. It doesn't say that at all. It says sort. So what the hell is a sort? So that was basically my question to Ken.
Yeah, it's their sort of, system of classification. It goes a kind, sort, variation. Of course, when you get further up, it's a disambiguation. Demarcation is above that. Who the hell knows? They're just making this stuff up. Like, they're just.
Dr. Mark, based on what you said, then creationists will have a problem, because if you're saying it's a tiered level that starts with kind and sort and variation, then sort would have to be more than a kind. In which case, how big is this arc? Because I know it's one of the things that you specifically argued when you did your debate around how many animals can actually fit in the ark. I can't remember if it was with Kent Hovind or whether it was with Nephilim or something, or T-Rock, I think it might have been. So you raised the point in one of your earlier debates around how many animals can the ark actually fit. So if you're going to go down the definitions of sort, and based on what you said, Mark, that sort is the next level down from kinds, then you're not going to fit those animals on the ark.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then you've got the problem that he'll never ever define what he means by kind or sort or anything else. When pushed on it, he'll give, well, they can breed and bring forth, but then you point out that, hey, these two different kinds can breed and bring forth, or these animals like the deer can't bring forth, yet they're the same kind, and he'll just go, well, the animals know which ones, so it doesn't matter. And it's like, no, it does matter, because you're claiming something here that only the same kind can bring forth, i.e. breed and produce viable offspring. But when we go, hey, but this kind is a deer and they can't do that, he doesn't want to basically address the problems. He wants to just hand wave it away like it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And this is the beauty about debating Dr. Kent Hovind, is that he's very predictable. So what Mark says that Dr. Hovind does is that he'll use things like, bring forth, in other words, give birth, is a definition of kind. So something can bring forth, and it's obviously kind, like a dog brings forth a dog but doesn't bring forth a cow. So a dog and a cow are different kinds. So I kind of got him in this debate to kind of define what bring forth was. And then I kind of pointed it back to him and said, you're always saying that we came from a rock, but you can never show a textbook that says literally we came from a rock. So here's the Bible was saying, God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind. And if your definition of bring forth means give birth, then I'm sorry, your Bible is actually telling me that it's giving birth, that you came from a rock. Like the Bible literally says what you're accusing me or us evolutionists is saying, but plain as day, your Bible is saying exactly that. So he didn't like that one at all.
Yeah. And we see that they love to invoke other mythologies too. Like when they talk about the flood, they go, oh, there's so many other cultures with flood myths. Yeah. There's so many cultures that refer to Earth as a mother. Mother Earth brings forth all life. Hell yeah.
Tell me if I'm reading this wrong, Ken.
Okay, I'll be glad to.
The Bible confirms evolution.
I'll be glad to. If you look up the definition of species, here it gives, in biology, a group of living organisms.
Why are we defining based on what a biology textbook says when we're talking about the Bible, Kent? What does it matter what the biology textbook says when we have here the inerrant, infallible fount of all knowledge?
And he's in a difficult position that Dr. Ian's put him in, because he's already said that every word of the Bible is correct. So the problem with literalists is that there's no actual 100% literalists of the Bible. Because when you start to look at it, and especially things like Psalms, which is supposed to be poetic language kind of thing, the four corners of the earth kind of stuff. I've only ever met one person to say, well, there could be corners to the earth. Like everybody understands that is not literal. Like it's not literally the earth has these, squared off corners in the middle of, somewhere. Everybody knows that. But so you have to read it with some kind of hyperbole in it. It's just the literalists say, hey, well, I'll put what I'm interpreting as metaphor all the way down here, but there's still going to be some.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's quite. I do love it when they try to argue for corners, though. It reminds me of our debate with Flatzoid and Jim, where we were talking about, like, why can't we use the famous P900 to zoom in on God's feet since he's using the earth as a footstool? You know, why can't we show his feet are up there?
That would be great. No, I missed that one. What was the response to that one?
I don't recall. I'm sure they dodged because that's what they do. But if it was something funny, it didn't lodge in my brain.
Saturday would have been a good one. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
Consisting of similar individuals capable of exchanging genes or interbreeding. Similar, type, kind, sort. These are called synonyms, okay?
Oh, type. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Type is the highest one. I got that wrong.
Oh, okay.
My sincere apologies. I feel free to revoke my doctorate. I feel like I don't deserve it anymore.
We'll have to fall back on your other two.
My other two, yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so we've got type, kind, sort, family, genus, species.
Kind, or they'll bring forth after their sort. You're the first person who ever misunderstood that in the history of the planet. And you're the first person I've ever heard misunderstand that when God said they're going to bring forth the kind, the cattle kind, the bird kind, the insect kind, that nobody's ever misunderstood that before, Ian.
No one has ever misunderstood.
Did I misunderstand it though? Did I? Because he didn't want to answer it. Did I misunderstand it though?
Well, I'm thinking of where later on in Leviticus and Deuteronomy we get the lists of the groups of creatures, and bats are included in the bird kind.
Mm-hmm.
So no one has ever misunderstood what the bird kind means. Okay, Kent, sure.
Okay. It's obvious there are various different kinds of creatures. He names 3 in the first one, 3 different kinds. So it's obviously plural.
And what is that? Living creature, beast, and what? Cattle or creeping things, I should say. So his kinds were what? Creeping things, living creature, and cattle. And they're all singular, by the way. Okay. They're not saying cattle or a whole bunch of, they're all singular.
Right. Okay. You're doing what you did a year ago. You're focusing on.
He didn't answer, did he? He's not answering.
You told me you.
Right.
No,
he didn't answer.
He can't.
Believe the Bible is evidence for Luca. Thank you so much. I think you're the only person who's ever ever thought of that.
That's his answer. That's his answer. You're the only person that it's not a non-answer.
He's not wrong. I've never heard of that argument either. Which, that's one of the reasons that we as I said in the last part, but for those of you who are just joining us this time, the reason I enjoy Ian's debates against Kent so very much is because he keeps coming up with novel stuff I've never seen before. And watching Kent try to stick to his script while dealing with a completely novel obstacle course of arguments is just hilarious. I love it.
Thank you.
Write a book on that. That's a brand new one. What's your second evidence? Please go on. I don't have to defend the Bible. I think a 4-year-old.
You can't. It's obvious you're a bit of an athlete because you've been running away since far. I've never seen someone run away as fast as you have. I have to say, Ken, I reckon intelligent thoughts always follow you, but you were just too fast. You are an athlete.
Look at him go.
All right.
Okay.
They don't need to know.
Look, I'll skip through this stuff anyway. It was just. Okay, so let's get into
the slide I was talking about. If he was to add, if you go don't go back, but I'm saying if you did want to have a look at it, that was the slide where I kind of said if he was going to add to the Bible, there was an actual verse that says, "Do not add to the Bible, or God will add plagues and all this kind of stuff to you." Basically,
it's right at the end of Revelation. I mean, I don't have the KJV handy, but it's
your Bible, Dr. Ember. I can't remember what I put in, but yes, I think you're right. It's probably a Revelation.
Yeah, yep, very end. Revelation 22:15. I get to do my God voice. I warn everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this scroll.
That's pretty good. That God voice is pretty damn good.
Hell yeah.
It's a little high pitched, to be honest with you.
Am I too high now? Do I need to use my AI thing?
I liked it. It sent shivers down my back. I loved it. It was good.
If anyone adds anything to them, God will add to that person the plagues described in this scroll. And if anyone takes words away from this scroll of prophecy, God will take away from that person any share in the tree of life and in the holy city which are described in this scroll. He who testifies to these things says, Yes, I am coming soon. Amen. Come, Lord Jesus. The grace of the Lord Jesus be with God's people. Amen.
I think that deserves a clap. I like that one. That's a great voice. Yeah, great voice.
Yay.
You almost made me believe there was a God, Dr. Ember. Who was that?
I've been called worse.
Yes.
Thank you. Simon.
I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, you've been called a god or goddess or what have you." But I mean, yes, that often implies adoration, worship, sacrifices, all sorts of wonderful ego-building things. But on the flip side, it's also implying that you don't actually exist. Say, Lovey.
It's been an hour.
Well, you couldn't answer the fact that the Bible confirms Luca. I was reading it literally. You basically did this. Go away, intelligent thoughts. You can't catch up with me. So anyway, let's talk about genetics here. All right,
Please.
and talking about genetics, Ken. I mean, I actually think you have too much chlorine in your gene pool, right, personally. But that's just my view. All right, so
Yeah, it's bleached his hair.
Zoom right over Kent's head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no. I'm not even sure if Donnie got that because he's just kind of like blink, blink. Oh my.
okay, so what I'm trying to do here is try to kind of really hone down and understand, your definition of kind. So I've taken, muntjacs as an example. So here are some examples of muntjac species. And muntjacs are a small deer from the family Cervidae. That's just what we evolutionists kind of call them. We don't call it a muntjac. We call them, from a family of Cervidae. And there are 14 muntjac species today. Would you agree that these are all what you would call at least one kind of call it the muntjac kind if you want? Would you agree that these species would be what creationists would kind of call one kind?
I think there'd be some more study involved to make sure. There's a lot of things. Some animals look similar that are not. They can't interbreed.
They can bring forth with each other.
Sure,
so they can bring forth with each other.
It looks to me at first glance that these are the same kind of animal. They're a deer. They're certainly not a potato.
You get the feeling he
hedges
his bets. Like he never answers. Like, oh, it looks kind of looks to me the first time. It's like he knows something's happening, but he's not quite sure what's going to happen. So it's like he's hedging his bets.
Yeah.
Oh, all the time. When I'll give him partial credit. His trap detection skill has gone up over the past few years. It's still not great, but every now and then he builds those walls of qualifiers just in case something's about to jump out and get him.
Initial agreement, which you then try to backtrack. They can all bring forth with each other. That's fine. So we agree they're the muntjac. So now let's look a bit broader. So muntjacs, obviously here you said, okay, they're the same kind. Let's look a little bit broader now, and I'm going to bring up deer. All right. So here are examples, a whole bunch of different deer species. There are about 43 extant deer species today. Now, calling it a deer family isn't very accurate. That's not a very scientific term. As I said, we call it a Cervidae family. And they include things like, the deers that you see there, but things like reindeer and moose. So they can all bring forth with each other. So I guess the question to you, Ken, is would you call these species part of the deer kind?
It looks to me like they're the same kind. Again, here's the deer. I think the deer has a family tree that may have gone back to a deer.
And look, these are easy questions because I thought you would say that. So we started off small with the muntjacs, and then we kind of brought it up to what kind of looks like a muntjac into the deer kind.
Sure.
So my question is, do you think the muntjacs and the deer are the same kind? Now, if I were to say to you, Kent, that there have been, and it's very, very rare, but there have been instances where muntjacs and deers hybridize, but the offspring are sterile. That's not to say in the past they were not sterile, but today there are very rare instances of both the muntjacs and, let's take the red deer or the mule deer having children, but that children is sterile. Would you then call the muntjac and the deers that you see on screen here today, would you call them all part of the one deer kind?
At first glance, I would say yes. They're probably all the same kind. I don't know how many kinds of deer God created on day when He made the deer on day 6, but it looks to me like
there could be several deer kinds. Okay, I get that. Okay, but what I'm saying is, and I would tend to agree with you.
Here's the thing. Question is, why can they breed and bring forth anything at all? Like the viability or the fertility of the offspring isn't one of. Oh, I've gone full screen. I feel very set upon. Where are my fellow doctors? I have to have a conference. I think that sort of where was I? Sorry, I just misled myself. Yeah, the viability or how fertile the offspring are isn't one of his criteria. It isn't they bring forth after their kind and that kind can also breed, right? That isn't his criteria. It's just whether they can bring forth after their kind. So that's one point. The second point is, why can they do that at all? If that he has to admit that they're different kinds, then why is that why can they do that at all?
Indeed. That is a bit of a curiosity. If even with the accelerated evolution that they posit, even though evolution itself cannot exist, why would things that aren't related be able to partially reproduce? Why would things that are related not be able to fully reproduce? What exactly is the purpose behind all of this? Why would God do that? It's very peculiar.
Mm-hmm.
You, by your definition, it's not an evolutionist definition, but by your definition, Ken, that they are so closely related that even though their offsprings are sterile, that they have a very close, I call it common ancestor, you'll call it the kind, you can call it the deer kind if you want, I'll call it the evolutionist term of the Cervidae family. So I think we're kind of agreed here. Okay, so the reason why I kind of wanted to bring this up, because I want to talk about humankind versus ape kind here, all right? So evolutionists would classify chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans as having a common ancestor. And we classify this as the hominidaic subfamily. Now,
do you think he
creationists would
noticed?
say
Okay,
chimpanzee and
Dr.
gorilla
Mark, do you
are
think he would have noticed that?
I really hope so. I hope so much. But did you know he was going to insult you? So did you know that he was going to insult you so you could use these like really insulting slides? Because obviously you did this ahead of time. It looks like you're a prophet kind of thing. Like
I figured I was always going to insult him, but I was going to do it like I do it subtly.
Yeah.
To me, you can insult someone, but the difference between me and Kent is Kent just calls you an idiot, but you got to insult someone with a bit of finesse. So I'm trying to do this.
Australian.
Yeah.
That's very Australian.
This subtly.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's very Australian. It's sort of, insults in Australia are kind of sometimes they're evident, but sometimes they're so subtle and there's a fine art.
It's an
like
art,
how comedians really insult in the there's sort of the whole idea of going out on the street as a reporter and questioning people and just letting them insult themselves. Basically, it's a big thing in Australia that people do that.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah, I'm thinking of things like the Chasers. They would do things like that. So yeah.
Yep.
Although, is it really an insult to point out that prisoner number 06453-071 is a criminal? Because it's just a statement of fact.
You're right. Yes, that is a good point. I'm just laying the facts on the table, basically.
That's right.
the ape kind, and they are separate from humans who are a specially created kind. So creationists will say there is no common ancestor between chimpanzee and gorilla, ape kind, and humans, Homo sapiens, as a separate created kind. Whereas evolutionists would say all three of these have a common ancestor. Is that something that, am I articulating your belief here correctly?
Yeah, those do not have a common ancestor. Okay, there's no evidence at all of an ape or chimpanzee ever producing a non-chimpanzee baby. There's no evidence for that.
So you've heard this before, but I want to kind of delve into it a little bit here. So let me talk about one of the best evidences of why. And I'm going to talk about chromosomes. So we can see that chimpanzee and gorilla have 48 chromosomes, but interestingly, humans have 46. So if you kind of look at that on the face of things, you kind of go, well, different levels of chromosome. How can humans be the same as chimpanzees and gorilla if they have a common ancestor? Well, surprisingly, we have discovered why, and that is because we can see a chromosome fusion event has occurred, where 2 chromosomes from chimpanzees and gorillas have fused together to make it 46 chromosomes in humans. So we have less because we saw chromosome fusion. So the question really is, Kent, and I know you don't, but I want to ask you, do you accept that a chromosome fusion occurred here between chimpanzees and gorillas and humans?
He's got his slides ready, doesn't he?
Why we believe that there's a.
He's got his script ready. He's starting to pull his chromosome fusion 2 slides.
Yep. He's been getting that info from Donnie, which you know, I guess an old dog can learn new tricks. But I'm curious if Kent has ever had a karyotype done, because I'm not convinced he has 46 chromosomes.
So do you think he's got one extra one? Could be.
He may have an extra. He may be a short one. It's who knows? Who knows? There's a whole huge variety of genetic anomalies even within our kind that can bring forth. We know he can because, behold, Eric exists. But that doesn't mean he's not anomalous.
I think it reminds me of a line I said to him in our second debate, where I said that Kent was evidence that evolution could go in reverse.
Oof. It's kind of, I mean,
so he's evidence of devolution as
exactly.
Genetic entropy.
It makes me want to look up that clip of Eric doing math badly on a live stream, but it's fine. It's fine.
Common percent between that. Do you agree with that?
I do not. I think that's why you believe that. I think you're mistaken. You're showing the number of chromosomes. You're not showing the number of genes. You're not showing the DNA code. That's like me saying Microsoft PowerPoint has 10 million lines of code and Microsoft Word has 10 million lines of code. Wow, that's proof.
Yeah.
Proof of
But I'm saying that the reason why the chromosome is different is because there was a fusion event, and we can see that fusion event. And because we can see that fusion event that has happened, then we know that in the past there was a common ancestor with humans where they all had 48 chromosomes. Humans specifically fused to have 46. But that proves that there was a common ancestor between all 3 on the screen here.
That is totally incorrect. You need to keep studying this a little bit more. We do not know that there was a fusion event millions of years ago or any time in the past. It might.
From his point of view, it's not millions of years ago, but it's pretty undeniable there was a fusion event. You know, even people on his side, the folks at AIG, that Thompson person with Creationist Research International or whatever the fuck it is, they've analyzed it. There's a centromere and a cryptic centromere. There's telomeres in the middle of the chromosome.
No,
it's undeniable.
Yeah, exactly. And I let him kind of go on a little bit here, because my whole point is really whatever diagnostic characteristic that he's about to tell me now on why apes and gorillas and humans are different, is he going to apply that the same to the deer kind that we talked about previously? So that was why I kind of let him go on a little bit, to kind of show the audience that he's not applying the same characteristics diagnostically in here, in this human ape kind, versus what we talked about previously around the muntjacs and the deer kind.
Well, and I don't get what his slides got to do. Like, and Donnie they did a blast analysis, and they came up with like other places that have head-to-head sort of repeats of the telomeric sequence. But the problem is that they're tiny compared to the one in chromosome 2. So it's kind of this, well, we found this other thing that we're going to try and debunk. And it's like, no, wait, like it doesn't actually debunk anything. It doesn't.
I had a subsequent conversation on this specific topic with Donnie, a couple of conversations on it, where I think Donnie just wanted to kind of have a go at answering the question that I think he thought that Kent didn't answer very well. And he raised that point. And what I said to him was, you've got 3 billion base pairs in the human genome. You've just shown me a head-to-head repeat of about 20 characters. What's the chance that you're going to get 20 characters that happens to be exactly the same in 6 billion total base pairs, basically, right? And I think that's, it will happen. Randomly, you're going to get that. But what's the chance of getting multiple high-density repeats which is what we see in a telomere fusion site, what's the possibility of seeing, I think it's 798 character lengths, or whatever you call those single CATG letters, right? What's the chance of that happening by accident versus 20 random letters that just so happen to look like a repeat? So he could answer that, because I kind of said, look, that's accidental. That could be just something that you just see because you've got 6 billion you got 3 billion base pairs, and you're showing me 20 random letters that could conceivably, kind of like line up to what you're trying to show me. So we did discuss this, but the whole thing about that conversation, if you guys want to have a look at my channel in that discussion with Donnie, I will ask him in a subsequent conversation that we'll have, I think, planned in the next couple of days, why are you focusing on the 1 or 2 very small differences and you're not answering the hundreds and thousands of similarities that we can see? Yeah, because you'll go yes, but what about this little thing where I found 20 head-to-head letters, and I'll go, why are you focusing on 20 when you just ignore the thousands that are just the same? Do you get what I mean? It's like cherry picking of data almost.
Yeah, kind of reverse cherry picking. It's like, let's ignore all this stuff that we completely makes sense to focus on the one thing we can misrepresent as something that seems to not make sense.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to throw out, because it bugs me whenever Kent does it, what he's got on his screen right now. If all the chromosomes from one human were stretched out and tied together, it would go across the solar system twice.
Irrelevant, isn't it? Yeah.
It's not just irrelevant, it's misleading. If you took all of your DNA, a single set, one cell's nucleus, and stretched it out, it would be about 2 meters. You have to take the DNA from every cell in your body, including the cells that aren't human, the gut bacteria, roughly 37 trillion cells estimated, and tie them all together. Billions of repeats of your DNA from every cell you've got in order to pull off that across the solar system twice. And why the fuck would you do that? That's multiple, it's billions of repeat copies of your DNA. You may as well say, why not tie together the DNA of every human on the planet, all 8 billion of us? Then the DNA would reach over 11 light years. If we're going to throw out irrelevant crap, why not go for maximum impressiveness,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Might have been designed that way to start with. The DNA code from one person, if it was pulled out of your body, all the chromosomes unwound, tied together, go across the solar system twice. We're talking about a mind-bogglingly complex code. You do not know that there was a fusion event. We know that it appears like they are fused. That we know. We do not know anything other than that. You wish to infer that, go ahead. But that's not science.
Okay. I think I can try to address this very quickly. Can you put my next slide on the screen, Donnie, if you can?
Yeah, it looks like it's still the same slide. You want to put the next slide?
Yes, I'll move it. I'll move it when it's showing. Okay, thanks, Donnie. All right, so let's go back to the deer kind.
Let's just stay on that slide for a little bit
Here is
longer.
the examples of muntjac and deers. I put them together so you can kind of see it. But I want to kind of highlight now the different chromosomes that sit underneath here. So we can see that the red deer and the mule deer have both 68, where other deers have 70. When we look at the red deer, we can see that there was a chromosome fusion of 23 and 4 that fused together. And we look at the other deers and it looks like, well, chromosome 1 is what kind of, has kind of led to this fusion event. Interestingly, the mule deer also has a chromosome fusion. It's chromosome fusion 1 and 2. So it's a different fusion event for these 2 different species. And that's why they have 68 chromosomes. And that's why the other deers have 70. When you look at the muntjacs, though, there's a very huge amount of different chromosomes here. The Reeves muntjac, as you can see, has 46 chromosomes. And when we look at the genetics of it, we can see that there are 12 fusion events. 6 of them seem to be from a common ancestor, and there were 6 completely new ones. And then when we look at the other types of muntjacs, the fear muntjacs at the bottom left, the Gongshang and the criniforms muntjac, they all show different chromosomes that have been fused. So fusion events happen. So Kent, my question is very simple. It is, you deny that there's a chromosome fusion that occurred between chimpanzees and gorillas and humans, and you say, well, this is why it's separate. But yet you agree that the muntjacs and the deers are possibly the one deer kind, but yet they have different chromosomes, and yet we can see chromosome fusion happen here. Why is there 2 different standards, and how do you reconcile that in your response to me, or your answer back to me.
First of all, Ian, I did not deny that there's a chromosome fusion. I said we don't know. You cannot prove if there was a chromosome fusion in any of these creatures. They could all have been designed that way. I don't think it's...
just to fuck with humans. When we discovered DNA.
Exactly like a fusion event, right?
Yeah. And why make it look exactly like a fusion event? Like what's the point? What
and that question, Dr. Mark, becomes even more stupid when you take it past the deer kind. Like we've got the same chromosomes. The way we diagnostically characterize the human and ape chromosome 2 fusion, it's the same way that we've diagnostically characterized what's happening in the slide and deer kind. It's the same way that we know what happened in the bear kind, in the canine kind, in almost every different animal groups where there's a chromosome fusion. The way we kind of know that it's happened is the same characteristics across all of them. Do you get what I mean? So if you're going to deny there's a chromosome fusion that actually occurred and it was just created that way, then you're denying it for not just these 2 kinds, it's every single animal kinds, because all of them, everyone you can think of, canine, feline, whatever, they all have examples of chromosome fusion and also chromosome fission. We never talk about the fission stuff. We always talk about fusion, but chromosomes can join and they can split.
Yeah, and it makes things very interesting. And with animals, it's one thing, but plants get absolutely nuts with that shit.
Yeah, exactly.
High altitude plants or high UV exposure plants, they spontaneously exhibit polyploidy. They'll double, quadruple, or even more their chromosome arrays. We don't know for sure why that is. But if everything's designed perfectly, that's an awfully strange characteristic for them to have.
It's possible to prove such a thing. So don't put words in my mouth. I did not deny it.
Why would God design 2 chromosomes?
You're going off on a different topic. You're changing topics. I said I did not deny it. I said we do not know that there was a fusion event. It could have been designed that way. Why God did it? Oh, I have no idea. Why the DNA?
So God designed it to look exactly like a fusion event. That's what you're saying. I mean, you're saying.
I'm gonna jump in. I just want to clarify. Ian, are you saying if all of those creatures go back to the same kind, fusion would be necessary?
The deer one. Let's say the deer one's easy to explain because there's only one fusion. There's 2 separate fusion events, but it leads to 2 animals with 68 fusion.
Yep, we love the rescue. Swooping in, Donnie Ex Machina, because God can't be bothered.
Chromosomes versus 70. So what I'm saying is that the common ancestor of all these deers had 70 chromosomes. And as they started to
I'm just going to jump. I just want, exactly what I'm saying. So your argument is, if all of these species belong to one kind, at one point in time they would have had the same number of chromosomes, but now they have different.
Yes. And what I'm saying is both the red deer and the mule deer have shown a chromosome fusion in 2 separate chromosomes. They didn't fuse the same, they fused differently. And that's why there's 68 now.
Okay, so you're saying the reason they have a variety
that's what I'm saying, Johnny.
Because of chromosome fusions.
Correct. Yes.
Well, he has to dumb it down for Ken. Ken's not going to understand that, Dr. Ian. His doctorate is so advanced that he doesn't understand basic concepts. So you've got to dumb it down.
His doctorate isn't in English.
Know that.
The 70 chromosomes of the fallow deer, and we can see that both the red deer and the mule deer have a longer chromosome that seems to fit 2 smaller chromosomes in the fallow deer. Interestingly, though, is that both the red deer and the mule deer have 2 separate chromosome fusions. So if God created this, then he created it to look like there was a fusion event that happened to have fused in 2 different ways across 2 different species. Why is that, Ken? Why did God make the red deer fuse their chromosome differently from the mule deer, and it both looks as if it was a combination of 2 shorter chromosomes in the other deer species? I mean, is he trying to trick us?
I'm gonna jump in. Okay, I appreciate that. Hopefully that helps.
Save him.
Save him. He breaks the rhythm of it, doesn't he? Like I was actually just thinking, am I debating you, Donnie? Like I was like, I don't know.
Right. Right. No, this is what Donnie's trying to stall to give time for Kent to answer, because Kent doesn't have an answer at the moment. And don't forget that Kent, he uses the same script over and over. He has nothing new. He can't answer this, right? And Donnie knows it. So he's got to try and give time for Kent to understand what it is and sort of come up with something. I think Donnie's wasting his time. I think Kent won't be able to come up. I love this, Ian. This is amazing stuff, mate. Absolutely amazing.
High praise indeed from you, Dr. Mike.
Thank you, Dr. Ian.
The debate expert.
Look, I masturbate upon occasion. I take on so many debates at once. I would call myself a masturbator. Yeah,
it's true. Anyone who doubts it, on Mark's channel, there's a series of room rumbles, and in some of those, Mark goes into a room and takes on, as many as 10 other people at the same time. It's a lot of fun if you enjoy internet debates.
My suffering is your entertainment. Thank you.
That's right.
These arguments to be understandable to everybody. Kent, let's throw it back to you to reiterate the question. If these species go back to the same kind, why do they now have different numbers of chromosomes?
Oh, we don't know. We don't know that they fused. The fact that two of them look like they're stuck together does not mean they fused. They might have. And I think there needs to be more research. But he starts with the dogmatic statement.
But the research has been done, Ken. I'm not making this up. There are papers that show it has been fused. What you're saying is that you don't believe the papers. Is that your answer is you don't believe the papers? That's my reading of it. Is that right?
There are papers on all kinds of topics. Nazi Germany had thousands of papers. How Hitler's a wonderful man too.
Oh, Godwin has it. I know this came up much earlier, but still, for this episode, Godwin, yay!
Yeah. It was either that or it's communism in North Korea or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird for you to go, well, there's all these papers with the genetics all spelled out. And he's like, oh, well, all kinds of papers can exist. But I don't like that one. I'm not going to believe that. Bye-bye DVDs. This is he is a science denier. And he'll go, oh, no, I love science. It's like, well, no, you don't. Because if you loved science, you wouldn't be cherry picking it like you are. You wouldn't be saying, hey, these people, I don't like what they've got to say, so I'm not going to believe that. That isn't something, whether you like what they say or not, or whether it's in your book of fairy tales, is not a criteria for whether we should believe something in science or not. It's whether it has testable, verifiable evidence for it. And, like if it's not a chromosome fusion, what is it? What is it? Oh, it's God just sorcery. He had Legos and decided to put the Legos together differently because he was bored or something. What is going on? It's just so nonsensical.
Enough Legos to stretch across the solar system.
Yeah, have you noticed, Dr. Ember and Dr. Mark, that even in his response, he's still hedging his bets? Because I don't know that there's a chromosome fusion too. It could very well be. Maybe God. It's like, you know how creationists is always saying when they read scientific papers, they were never certain. It's likely. It's maybe. They use those kind of words. Like we never say it definitely happened this way. It's always it's likely this happened. There's a strong because that's what scientific papers do. It's open to change when you get new data. That's how we write it. But when you listen to his response, it's exactly the same. Well, I don't know that God did it this way. I don't know if the chromosome fusion too. He could have done. He's just hedging his bets.
Yeah, and sort of, as I just said in the comments, he's trying to change the subject. This is what I mean when I say don't chase the rabbit. He's trying to put something out there. Oh, the Nazis said there were papers, and try to say, well, scientists are Nazis, kind of thing, in order that you'll go down there. And he wants out of this situation, basically. He knows it. Donnie knows it. Obviously, Donnie knows it because he's trying to rescue him. And we know it. And he's just putting out he's trying to put out something to trigger somebody so they won't continue this line of questioning. He is so transparent. When you actually see a few debates and start to understand what he does, he's not actually very clever in the way that he does it. As soon as he starts to say something contentious, he doesn't want to talk about that. He's so transparent.
Yeah, and as Rochester phrases it, switching evolution for social Darwinism. I don't know as I'd say he's that dumb. I mean, he could be. We don't know that he isn't, but in this case, it's a straight up red herring.
No, he is that dumb because he said before that, the Nazis used Darwinism kind of thing, like the Nazis believed in Darwinism. He said that outright before. He thinks that the theory of evolution is the same thing as social Darwinism, which is so, like, I don't know where these idiots get their information. Oh, well, creation ministry and stuff like that.
It's wild to me, to tangent briefly, that the reason they keep doing this nonsense is to bring in people into their ministries to donate. Donnie makes his living this way. Kent lost everything when he was in prison, and here just a few years later, he's got $4 million in the bank already. Why? I get that they do it to bring people in to get donations and shit. Why do people always donate in their direction? What are we doing wrong that we're not converting people to, like, donate to our causes, like, FFRF or something,
I don't know. It's just sort of people, because things are complicated in real life. And for some reason, people gravitate towards simple answers. The problem is they don't care whether those answers are actually true or have some kind of verifiable evidence behind them. It's easier to say, well, God's doing all this mysterious stuff than actually going, well, what's the reason why all of this is happening? And I get that people want things to be simple, but if that is causing you to leave with a distorted view of reality that is not accurate, then what are you doing? You're basically just playing make-believe at that point.
Yeah. It's Scott makes a good point. Religion is like a drug, which is true. Opiate of the masses, the endorphins and the dopamines and whatnot. I've been, I'm a minister myself. I've been to various ceremonies for various churches, and there's something about them. You get the gospel music going and you feel the spirit flowing, even though it's imaginary, you still feel real things. And yeah, there's a lot of money in drugs. It's pretty cool.
Writing a paper does not make it true. Okay. I'm sitting in the middle of a library with thousands of books.
And with that example of Nazi Germany, did America, Australia, China, any other country you want, did they also have papers saying that as well? Because the thing about scientific papers is that it's global. All right. So evolution is a global, it's a science that's global. So you have papers written in different countries that affirm this. You're giving me an example of one country that's being run by a dictator. So my question to you is to make sure it's a similar example is there the same papers in America? Is America also writing papers that saying, Nazi Germany or Hitler, whatever, is the most fantastic thing ever? Give me a proper example and not just make up these rhetoric.
Oh, there were plenty of Nazi supporters in America and in Australia.
Did they write papers? That is what you said, papers. Did they write papers?
We're way off topic here, Donnie.
You brought up the topic, Ken.
Okay.
You're right.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up Hitler, and then I'm going to be mad that we're off topic about Nazi. Okay.
Exactly.
Good job, Ken. Good job.
And the athletic thing's happening again.
Okay, I'll step in. Kent did bring up the topic. Ian, you had a chance to respond. Let's get back to common dissent now. We're even. It's fair play.
Yeah. I'm still
move
waiting
on to your
for
next
Kent's
point. Go ahead.
Okay.
So Kent, do you wanna sorry, Kent, you go.
You do not know that there's been a chromosome fusion in the past. How many lines of code are there in the red deer? Those 68 chromosomes.
What does he mean by lines of code? That's not how DNA works.
No, it isn't.
Like, he's so lost in his own freaking analogy. Yeah. It's wild. Like, you could assert ontologically you can't know for sure there's a fusion event, and technically that's correct. But the standard of certainty necessary to make that statement reasonably true means you can't be certain of absolutely anything, including anything the Bible says, because you don't know it was written by a god. You've just been told that by other fallible humans. Frickin' nonsense.
Yeah, and
DNA
sort of,
is
like, I mean, how much evidence do we need for these fusion events? You know, we study these things pretty well, and he's just sort of going, his sort of argument against it is, nah. Well, why isn't it a fusion event? Because God designed it that way. Okay, where's your evidence for that?
I should have pressed him more,
yeah.
Dr. Mark, on this, because as we're going through this, one of the things that's now come through my head, which didn't actually happen in the debate itself, so I'm kind of kicking myself, but I mean, the alternative here is to say, well, if God made it look that way, then your response is, you know, God is a deceiving God. He's made it look like it's a chromosome fusion. And I didn't press him on that, Dr. Mark. It's come to my mind now that we're doing this debate dissection. It didn't occur to me in the debate itself, because I know Kent doesn't believe that God is like, he was perfect, he's good. He doesn't believe that God is a deceiving God. And I should have pressed him on that particular angle. I didn't do it, but yeah, oh well. Opportunity lost, I suppose.
And you can't hit everything.
Exactly. You know, and I wanna sort of say just how hard it is and how slippery Kent is, and all of these. There's a reason why he uses these tactics, and we have all fallen for them at one point or another. I certainly have, and then looked at the debate and gone, oh, I shouldn't have followed up on that. It's irrelevant. You know, he just did it as a red herring kind of thing. And debating's a lot harder than you would think. Like, do not think that this is absolutely easy or anything. Dr. Ian is doing fantastic. It's a minor criticism to say, hey, don't chase the Nazi thing. It's irrelevant, and you had him on the ropes kind of thing, right? Like, he wants you to go down that track and object to that, because he doesn't want to talk about those chromosomes. He doesn't want to talk about the deer where we found chromosome fusion in these deer at 2 different places. That's really good, because if chromosome fusion is design, why design it in different places, but something that's of the same kind?
Yep.
Yeah. Adds to the confusion to keep those pesky mortals in their place or something.
Is that how many lines of code is there in that
but
DNA code?
We know this, but that's the thing. You say we don't know, but we know this.
You keep saying we. Who's the we?
Scientists,
and
people
it's
that
not
have
you.
done the papers that measure these.
Yeah, we is an interesting phrase, because, you know, it's context specific. Like, you know, we are watching this debate, but at the time the debate was happening, the we might include Kent and Donnie, who were in the room, but not Mark and I. It depends on what you're talking about.
Yeah,
but when the context is clear, when it's saying we in the broad sense of the total sum of human knowledge, I don't know. Kent just, well, as Sterling puts it, Kent is a liar and misrepresents science. That's sort of his thing, you know.
These chromosomes.
Ian, I'm the scientist. I don't agree.
No, we know you're an athlete. We don't know you're a scientist. We know that you run away. The intelligent thoughts just can't basically catch up to you. So we've asked.
I really like that you hammered that, throwing his own kind of argument back at him. We don't know you're a scientist, Kent. You just say so.
We know he's not. We know he's not.
Yeah. Taught it 15 years, okay?
I taught science for 10 years.
So all I'm saying, Ken, is that we can look at those chromosomes and we can see there's one longer chromosome that pretty much matches exactly 2 shorter ones. And then you're saying to me, oh, we don't know. But when we present this evidence to you, why don't you believe that? Like, tell me your rationale that disputes why we don't know a chromosome. Let's flip this around. Why do you think that when a scientist say there's a chromosome fusion event and they present evidence of the exact DNA sequence that is basically an exact copy of 2 shorter ones put together? All right. Why do you say that's not evidence? Like, I don't understand it. If I rip this paper in half and I put it together and the words happen to match, to me that's one piece of paper that's been put together. But you're saying I don't believe that. So tell me, Kent, why do you doubt the evidence? People.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty. I mean, you know, it's great for a split event. Be like. In fact, we do that. That's one of the ways we demonstrated plate tectonics. Is we found various traits, layers, and fossilized trackways and things. And you know, part of them is over here on South America, and part of them is over here on Africa. And we go, oh, if we put these together, in the way that they look like they fit anyway, these things line up perfectly.
Yep.
How could that be? Well, we don't know that Pangea was ever a thing.
Yeah. And the I mean, I don't know if he even believes in that. He kind of this catastrophism idea, but like people used to think that, hey, it looks like South America kind of fits in Africa kind of thing, right? It seems to, the bulge of South America, and they were laughed at. But through geology, we actually found, exactly the same geologic layer on the east coast of Africa is on the western coast of South America. Like they actually fit exactly together. So this is how we know that they were once one continent that split and are moving apart.
Yeah, it's one of the reason I mention it is because it's one of the things that got me into science as a small child. I was an avid reader. I read every book I could get my hands on, and when I ran out of storybooks, I started reading my parents' old college textbooks. And when I got to the geology one, I mean, any child looks at the globe and says these look like puzzle pieces that fit together. And here in the college textbook, which, since it was when my parents went to college, means it was from 20 years earlier still, it describes plate tectonics as a brand new theory that's only been accepted for like 10, 15 years at that point. And I'm like, what year is this? How is this possible when you just look at a globe and it's so obvious? The fact that there's so many things still being discovered in science, even things that are incredibly obvious, there's so much possibility. There's so much potential still out there. But at the same time, the thing I did not learn as a small child and only discovered later, there's a lot of things that are incredibly obvious that turn out to not be true. Like all these deer, you might expect to have the same number of chromosomes, and they don't.
They don't.
Yeah. So it's fun.
I also have to say I love this presentation. Absolutely love it. It's fantastic. It puts it out there very simply for people to understand, and the chromosome fusions. It's just it's awesome. Awesome, Dr.
Thanks,
Ian.
Thanks, Dr. Mark.
Your professionalism is showing.
I got my doctorate from the School of Mark, the University of Mark.
That's dodgy. That's
Mark,
really dodgy.
You only take the best of the best, Dr. Mark. So it's a great school.
Well.
Hey, Mark U does have some significant advantages. I mean, besides, looking stylish, it also, the students there are renowned for doing a lot of reading.
There you go. But nice.
In fairness, you use that pun already, so.
I do. No, I can't fault you for it.
Oh, I just got it reading. I really am slow today. I'm normally trying to be on the ball, but
you're usually the pun master, Dr. Ian. You hassle me for not getting your puns.
I was sitting there a little bit puzzled. I was like, oh, what's going on here? And then I'm sorry, guys. I'll try to wake up.
It was too good. That's the problem. It was too good.
You have studied this, I'm telling you, and you're telling me I don't believe it. That's your answer. I don't believe it.
Well, you keep putting words in my mouth. I did not say I don't believe it. I'm saying we can't prove that's what happened. Okay.
But we did. That's what I'm trying to say. We
did. Who's the we? You proved it, or you read a paper?
I
will write a paper.
that I didn't actually put the links to the sources, so it's definitely on me.
I'm going to write a paper, not right here. It did not happen.
It's hilarious he does that, because going back to elementary school again, when the other kids tried to tell me about how the Bible is true, and we know the Bible is true because the Bible says the Bible is true, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And again, we're dealing with elementary school kids, 8, 9 years old, that kind of thing. And I'm like, how can you possibly think that makes sense? I can take a piece of paper and write on the paper, nothing on this paper is a lie, and then say whatever the hell I want. And, oh, well, it's written, so it must be true. Like, have you never read a comic book or a fiction story? What do you mean the book says? And yet, that's what Kent actually believes. Mm-hmm. And here he is saying, well, I can just write a paper right now. Cool, you can. Now get it peer-reviewed, buddy. Good luck. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, could you put that paper up for peer review?
Yeah.
That would be funny. Imagine Kent actually did put a paper up. I mean, what would he put up as peer review? His dissertation was funny.
His
There's been reviews
dissertation,
on
yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Kent Hovind.
Yeah, exactly.
We love it. It may be the most widely read dissertation in history, though, because there are a lot of us who've lulled at that.
There. Sure. Right.
I just
write that
just
paper.
wrote a paper. I wrote a paper.
Yes,
Ian.
and is it peer reviewed and published in a respectable journal?
There, all the peers here tonight. Did you see me write this? How many saw me write this? All the peers agree.
So Ken, you don't
go
understand what peer review is. You think peer review is basically holding up a paper that you read and everyone kind of nodding and saying, yes, I agree. Is that, honestly, are you joking, or is that what you think peer review is? Because this could be the problem, Ken. I think maybe we've got down to the problem with why you deny science, is that you actually have this straw man version as to how science works. You actually believe, if I wrote that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know whether you're joking or not. I'm taking you seriously. If I were to write something on a piece of paper, show it around to my audience and say, do you believe that? And they nod, then that becomes science. Is that what you're telling me, or are you joking? I really don't know with you sometimes.
Well, I'm joking to try to get you to understand the folly of what you are saying, okay?
But
that is a fair criticism, though. There's a lot of people here in the United States, even ostensibly highly educated people, who have no idea how the peer review process works. As came up yesterday on my proofread episode over on Mark's, I did not manage to complete law school because there's caps on student loans here in the U.S., but I did progress far enough that I participated in several courtroom actions, including doing one of my specialties in analyzing forensic evidence. I did it on stand as an expert witness in a couple of cases. And I'll never forget one case where an assistant district attorney tried to corner me on where I did my dissertation, where I published it, and whether I'm like, my guy, that's you're conflating how a dissertation works with peer-reviewed original research with applying known methods, techniques, and best practices to evaluate evidence. Like, I'm not gonna do a freaking case study on this case because I am a student, you know? Yeah. What do you mean, Mike? And he's trying like hell to discredit me. I'm like, the only reason I'm here is because I've studied this specific case and I have more training in this than you're supposed to be an expert in New York State. You have to take a 6-week course. The state police investigators who do the testifying on the part of the prosecution, they take a 6-week course, and that's for everything altogether. That's fingerprints, DNA, hair follicle analysis, polygraphs, all of it in one 6-week course, and that grants them the rank of expert. It's wild. But the point is, for the tangent, is that a lot of Americans, even highly educated ones, have no fucking idea what peer review is or how it works.
Yeah.
You do not know.
Stupid, Ken. It makes you look dumb and ignorant.
Okay, guys, I'm going to jump in. So I just want to keep it as equally timed as possible. We're going to throw it to Kent. Kent, take as much time as you need to respond to this argument, and then Ian, let's move on to another.
Okay. Sure, but just so he understands what I want him to tell me why, and it can't be because I don't know or I don't believe. Why does he not think the evidence that shows a chromosome fusion and I use this example in the deer, 70 chromosomes in the ancestral species moving down to 6A, where we can see exactly which chromosome fits the 2 smaller chromosomes that's been fused. Why does he not believe it?
I don't know that I believe it or don't believe it. I'm saying this cannot be proven that it happened. Could it be that all the deer in the world went through a traumatic experience like Noah's flood and they had to diversify?
Oh, Noah's flood. I'm so glad he brought that up, because that cuts the timeline down even farther. It doesn't matter how much they diversified before the flood. If the flood was a real thing, then only 2 deer, or possibly 7, depending on which book of the Bible you're reading at the moment, got on the damn boat, and they all had to bring forth from there. So even if there were different deer kind or whatever with different chromosomes, they should have been wiped out by the flood. And yet here we are. So how did this happen, Kent? My goodness.
Well, and I love that sets him up so badly for the next part. I presume you're going to is the muntjac, where the southern red muntjac has 7, and the Reeves muntjac has 46. So how long has this been happening after the flood? Like, how many fusions have occurred? Like, why aren't fusions happening non-stop every single generation then? Because that's ridiculous. That's like, what, 4,000 years, I think? What is it, about 4,000 years ago was the flood?
Yep, about that.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah, 4,000 something with change, I think, but roughly
but
about
even Dr. Mark, you break down his hypothetical scenario here. So you bring 2 very sort or kind or whatever it is onto the ark. Presumably that had 70 chromosome. Then the flood happened, and so that means the kid or the children of those 70 must have been 68. But they would have had the children of the deer after the event. Does that make sense? So you'd have to try and figure out what the event did before those children actually was conceived. Does that make sense? Unless he's saying that, I don't know. I'm probably
yeah. No, I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. It just doesn't. His answer doesn't quite make sense either.
So much fun.
Survive from Noah's Ark and live in different climates, and there was some kind of pressure put on them to cause them to have mutants that were more likely to survive. They could be a chromosome fusion, but that is still not evidence.
You just described common descent. So irrespective of whether it's a Noah's flood or whatever, you're saying that some sort of environmental pressure was so great, you're saying it's Noah's flood, that they had to diversify from 70 chromosomes to these deer speciating to 68. Fine. Let's just drop the deer and put homininae there. Okay, 48 chromosomes. Big catastrophe, Noah's flood, and they then diversify to chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans. Common descent. I mean, your argument basically just confirms that humans are the same kind as gorillas and apes. What am I not understanding from what you're saying?
Well, if you want to be an ape, go ahead, Ian. You can be whatever.
All apes.
You can identify however you want. Okay, are you a he ape or a she ape? You can identify.
Wow. Okay, just a little bit of bigotry thrown in there for good measure. Of course, it would look everybody. It wouldn't be a Kent Hovind debate without him being a horrible bigot at some point during the debate. In some way, racist, sexist, anti-trans or anti-gay, just a homophobic.
Let me share with you. So I didn't really want to do a second debate after my first one with Kent, but Donnie kind of convinced me. And the only reason why I did it was if you guys follow Kent Hovind's debate, he had a debate with a guy called with I think I'm sorry, I don't know who she is. Fox, I think it's Fox Official or something Fox anyway. But she identified as a female, and there was another lady, Daria. I think she also identified as a female, and he was very transphobic. Like I think there was one egregious thing that did where he kind of said, "Can you get your boyfriend?" And then he asked about Daria's private parts. Right?
Yes.
It was only after those events that I thought, okay, I'm going to do a debate with him, and I'm going to punish him for his transphobia. Now the problem is this actually got cut out of so if you kind of go watch it in my channel, it got cut out. But I basically asked Ken, I said, Ken, I kind of position it as at the beginning saying, Ken, I want to be respectful, etc. What are your pronouns? Like, what do you identify yourself at? And he saw that one come in, he shut that one down. And at the very end of my conclusion, I said, look, the only reason why I want to ask that is because we all know that a real man does not beat his wife, so you must identify as a woman. And so I snuck that one in basically to kind of punish him for transphobia. Nice. But in the actual in the actual completed one that Donnie kind of put up, he actually cut that part out. So it's only you actually saw that debate live, you'd actually hear me say that. But it's like, yes, he's that transphobia comment on him really got me quite incensed.
Yeah. It's but it's Ken. He will be bigoted because he doesn't actually want to debate, the topic. He wants to distract you as much as possible, and you have to be aware of that going in. It's another red herring.
Yeah, it's a tactic. It's a red herring, but it's also a dog whistle to show, if you think this thing is stupid, you should be on my side, regardless of how you feel about creation. It's a way to pull in more people. These fuckers, you know?
Am a he ape? Are you a
Okay.
mammal? Are you a mammal?
Man
Are
has
you a
decided.
vertebrate? I mean, it's a classification. Yes,
Right.
we are all apes. Yes, we're all mammals. Yes, we're all vertebrate. So I'm still waiting, Donnie. Is he going to answer why, or is he still going to say he doesn't believe it? Because that is my takeout, Ken. Unless you want to change my mind, my takeout
Well,
is you don't
I
believe
think
the evidence.
I think Kent's answer, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kent. You said there could have been after the flood fusion
He can't even let Ken answer for himself.
Yeah. No.
Wow.
events here in these various species. Okay. So
Okay,
I guess
I'm
there's his
pointing
answer.
out-
Maybe we should
Which
move
means
on.
it's common descent,
I have said,
right?
I would say probably all these deer could be put on a chart with the family tree, and they might have had a common descent from a deer.
Mhm.
That does not prove that deer is related to the sunflower and the snake. Your chart
Talking
that you
about
want to
chromosome
teach the
fusion
kids.
here of the deer. So
Okay,
they maybe stick to chromosome fusion.
let's assume the chromosome fusion event did happen. Let's assume creatures getting off the ark had to diversify, and some of the deer went north and some of the deer went south, and some had a mutation in the chromosomes fused, and they were able to still have children. And now we got different populations of deer. They're
Okay,
still
look,
deer.
I agree with that. Now, I don't agree that it happened with Noah's flood. But what you just described is, there are speciation that happens from
Right.
a common ancestor, and through whatever those events happened, some has got 70, some has 68. That's essentially what you're saying, right?
I'm saying it is certainly possible that there can be what happens when a human gets an extra chromosome today? You get things that are detrimental from adding chromosomes, like Down syndrome and stuff like that. So
It was syndrome, yeah.
yeah. So I think that the fact that the chromosome is so complex, to duplicate it or to duplicate it incorrectly is highly likely, like a typographical error when you're typing out a huge book or
There
copying
is
or printing.
nothing in your response, Kent, that has basically debunked what I just said. So if you just substitute what you just said with deer with chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans. Okay, there was some sort of ape kind.
There's no connection. Humans are not.
You're supposed to debunk what I'm saying, and I'm just saying I've listened to what you said, and I've said, okay, take the deer out of it and put the chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans, and one's gone north and one's gone south, and mutations happen, and they've changed. It's still the common ancestor. So what I've always said in this presentation, this part of the presentation, is that humans, chimpanzees, and gorillas share a common ancestor. Your response is, well, the floods happen with deers, and one's kind of gone north and one's kind of gone south. Mutations happen, and that's why they've got different chromosomes.
Mhm.
Okay, swap the deer with chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans, and
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's exactly right. Like, why couldn't it have happened in humans?
Yeah. And that was the entire point about this question, and he didn't answer
It's
it.
beautiful. Yeah, no, because he's got no answer. He's just going to say, well, it could have happened in deer, but it couldn't have happened in humans. Because the answer, why not, we all know what the answer is. The answer that he can't give is, my book says that the humans were created by God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the answer.
From dirt and animated
Yes.
by a magical golem spell, but that's a whole other matter. Yeah, this is beautifully executed. Plato would be proud. When he was teaching in ye old philosophy school, he said, when your opponent makes a shitty argument, one of the easiest ways to defeat them is to take their argument and make it bigger, blow it up to the point of absurdity so that the cracks in their logic are undeniably obvious to all. And that's exactly what you've done here. It's like, this is the same argument, my guy.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So if that can happen in deer, why could that not happen in ape, producing the chimpanzee, the orangutan, the human? And you've spelled it out beautifully. All you have to do is put humans in the same place as the deer we see now, and the gorilla would be the mule deer, and we would be other way around. The gorilla would be the fallow deer, or the chimpanzee the fallow deer, and we would be the mule deer.
Mm-hmm.
We have the same difference in chromosomes, right? Total of 2 different.
Yep. Agree, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Just confirmed to me that after Noah's flood, they could very well have speciated into chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans with different chromosomes, but they still have that common ancestor. You haven't debunked me at all. You basically confirmed what I've just said.
You've made such a lousy comparison here. I think that the deer, are these interfertile? Can the red deer mate with the reindeer? I don't know. I've never studied that. Okay. Probably somebody has. And
They can, but the muntjacs and deers will have a problem.
Okay, but to put the deer on the chart with the sunflower and the frog, that's not science. That's stupid. If you wish to believe it, fine. And to say humans and chimpanzees and gorillas have a common ancestor from Noah's flood, that's also stupid. I think maybe the different skin colors of humans, you know, we got different types.
Maybe if you can answer
racial
why it's
characteristics they
stupid
call them,
instead
but
of just
actually there's
saying
only
it.
one race.
Yeah,
doesn't know.
it's
Sorry,
not
Emma,
quite
go ahead.
ad hominem. It's like a meta argument. It's like instead of addressing the argument, you call
Yeah.
the argument stupid. You're
Yeah.
not calling the presenter of the argument stupid, but it's still the same sort of thing. It's substituting attacking the argument instead of dealing with the argument.
Well, it's kind of that whole thing that saying something stupid isn't an argument. It isn't refuting an argument. It isn't addressing an argument. It is just hand wave dismissal. If you can say, hey, it's stupid because of these reasons, well, that's a different story. But he's not doing that. He's just saying it is stupid. So really, it's an appeal to incredulity, that he's just sort of saying, well, I don't believe it because it's stupid. Well, that's not an argument.
Yep.
But of course, now he wants to distract with the chart and, oh, you think you came from a pineapple. Like, we know why he does this. He does not want to talk about this anymore. I'm getting ready. I don't know if he will, but I'm getting ready for him to go, Donnie, can we move on, kind of thing, because he really is being absolutely cornered, and I love every second. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Race. But the fact that there's varieties of humans, tall, short, dark-skinned, light-skinned, that is not evidence we're related to the chimpanzees or monkeys. There are tens of thousands of differences between chimpanzees and humans, probably millions of differences. If you wish to believe you're a chimpanzee, go ahead. But that's not science.
If I can summarize your position, is that
It's so wild to me that he'll agree with the categorization that we use for everything. Like, are you a eukaryote? Why, yes, you have a nucleated cell and so on. Are you a vertebrate? Why, yes, I have vertebrae and a central spinal column with a nerve cord. Are you a mammal? Why, yes, I'm warm-blooded and have hair and mothers produce milk and so forth. Are you an ape? Oh, fuck no, I was specially created. What? How are you the same with all the other things? But when we get to this one subcategory, which is most clearly demonstrable because we have the most traits in common, you balk at it. What up?
I think where we differ, Dr. Ember, is that when people like myself, you know, Mark, Dr. Mark, and you, when we talk about ape, when we talk about animals, we're actually thinking of the scientific definition of those words. Yes. Obviously, with Rocky Kent, he's thinking animal is a brutish, unintelligent creature. And I'm not an animal. When he thinks ape, he's thinking, oh, I'm a caveman, you know, stupid, low, you know, he's thinking of that. Like, he doesn't actually understand that we're talking about, you know, the more scientific, phylogenetically descriptor of that word, as opposed to the more slang, you know, use of that word. Does that kind of make sense? So I think that's why he says, I'm not an animal, I'm not an ape, you are.
Well, it's because his religious beliefs, Dr. Ian, he sort of, because it says that humans and animals are different, right? That humans are this special thing that God created, while animals are of the earth, kind of thing. Like, this is a religious belief, so he can't believe humans are animals. But that conflicts with our scientific understanding of biology, where we know that humans are absolutely animals. Like, we have classifications for these things, and we are animals. We have all the same traits as every other animal out there. There is no difference. And I think the best series, actually, what you were sort of saying, we fall into these categories. The best series for it was R and Ra's series of, you know, that went through.
Classification of Life, that one?
Classification of Life, do you have, you know, a backbone? Then you are a vertebrate, you know, like.
Yeah.
In fairness, I don't think we can say for sure that Kent does have a backbone.
That's true. Yes. That is true. Yes. You've got me there. Excellent refutation, Dr. Ember. I have been put in my place, and I will stay there. Thank you.
I love it. Love it.
What you're now saying is that with the deer kind, there could have been changes in the chromosome In some cases, there has been chromosome fission where it's an actual split, but let's just focus
Maybe
on the
so.
chromosome
Maybe
fusion
so.
part of it.
Could
So
have
you're saying that potentially, maybe so. I know you don't want to commit, but what could have happened with the deer kind is that there could have been a chromosome fusion too, and that's why we see the different chromosomes. But with humans or hominid kind, which consists of chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans, what you're saying is, oh no, that's not an example of a common ancestor. Even though I accept it could be an example of common ancestor with deer, but with this it's different because, and your rationales, they look different.
That's not the only reason. I said there are thousands of differences. Somebody
That's true. There are thousands of differences between humans and every other species of primate, but there's more differences between humans than there are between humans and other primates. Like, the range of human capability is so vast. There's overlap with the other primates. Like, there are humans who are utterly incapable of language, verbal or sign language or writing.
Yeah, and once again, Dr. Ember, it's like now you sparked an argument in my head that I didn't think about in this actual debate. But I think if you go back to something that Erica from Gutsy Gibbon channel, if you guys haven't subscribed to her, you should, where she did some blast analysis and basically compared humans and chimps at 98-ish% similarity, but rats and mice had a much lower, genetic similarity there. So I can't remember what number she got, 92 or 93%, but she's saying rats and mice are so much different than human and chimps, and yet rats and mice look very similar. If you're going to go by Dr. Kent Hovind, then and looks being similar at all, then rats and mice look similar, but they're genetically much more different than a human and a chimpanzee.
Yeah, Erica does fantastic work, and we stand. She's, I don't know, I've never had a chance to interact with her directly, but I enjoy her content very much.
Yeah.
On a totally unrelated note, Jester, formerly Lord of Shenaniganery, I'm never going to drop that because it's amazing, sends a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Jester. I appreciate that very much. And says, listen, Ember, I'm always just a human until I'm a duck. Then I'm a phoenix, and that can transform into an elf, as is the logical conclusion for this case. And, I have to concede that's entirely logical to exactly the same degree as Kent's argument. It's quite suitable. Hell yeah.
Is that an inside joke or something, Dr. Ember? I don't quite understand that.
I'm not entirely sure I understand it either, because there's multiple layers going on here. Like, for example,
it sounds funny, but I'm trying to get
it. I'm always
like
just a human, for example, because it's a Jester, So yeah, there's a lot.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Oh, and also, we're a disgrace, folks. We're seeking of language, and
haterade.
Yes, the haterade of the haterade is off the charts, folks.
He's clearly been homeschooled. Poor guy.
And my fellow doctors, I really warned and gave him all the warnings in the world to stop disrupting chat. So I had to pull out the band hammer. I don't love it, but seriously, if you can't abide by the rules of the chat, this isn't a street corner and a public thing. You abide by the rules of the chat, or you don't get to chat. Like, this is a sort of private, it's not a public venue where you're in a somebody's channel. Please abide by the rules and treat people with respect, or else you're leaving.
And that's fair. I do envy your banhammer emoji, first of all, but the thing I really wanted to bring up was here we are with 2 out of 3 people here are Australian.
Yeah.
Did you know that we're un-American up in here? How peculiar.
Oh, yeah.
Who would imagine? Mark, how dare you? Ian, y'all are un-American. What the hell?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's odd because Australia, it doesn't have the same free speech rights. There's no rights in the Constitution to free speech. there's limited rights to assemble and there's rights to religion, but there isn't actually a right to free speech. So they will sort of clamp down on what people say in the interests of public safety or something like that. So you've got to remember that elsewhere in the world, that they don't necessarily have the same idea as you, that you are allowed to say literally anything and get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just telling a story to Dr. Mark and Dr. Ember just prior to this going live, that last year in my state of Victoria in Australia, we implemented a law that says you can't make Nazi references. You can't do the Nazi salute. You can't, praise Hitler in front of, in a public space. And just a couple of weeks ago, we had our first prosecution, and that person's in jail for 30 days for basically doing that on live camera. So yes, to Dr. Mark's point, there are things that we tolerate in Australia, and there are things that we do not tolerate in Australia. And I 100% support that. We should not be tolerating that kind of hate speech at all here. If you guys want to do it in America, that's your country. But I think there is a limit to what you can and cannot say in terms of free speech.
100% agree. And nobody's saying that you cannot have your country however you want, but just be aware that different cultures have different sensibilities and may not allow different types of speech. That's the thing. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. It's just the way that country does it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also there's no violation of a right to free speech, even if we were using an American paradigm, because this channel is my speech.
Yeah.
There's no government interfering here. There's no prosecutor or a U.S. department dropping in to silence anyone here. This is people with moderation authority acting on my channel, my platform. We see similar things with the newspapers around here. Like, people will write the most bigoted and hateful letters to the editor, to the remaining newspapers. And then when they don't get published, they'll write another letter complaining about how their freedom of speech is being stepped on. Well, no, it's not, because the government isn't interfering. The newspaper is a private entity with its own right to free speech. And the editors will usually respond with something along the lines of, you do have a right to free speech. No one will stop you from opening your own newspaper to say whatever the hell you please. Similarly, Mike, you are completely free to make your own channel and say whatever the hell you please. But also, from what I've seen of the chats you've made, you're not actually trying to say anything. You just keep asking if Islam is true. What are you trying to accomplish? I don't know. I mean, he's gone now, so it doesn't matter, but it's just, troll's gonna troll, I suppose. But I found it amusing to address it. And as you know, I am made of tangents. So that's why we do. That's what we do here.
That's why we love you.
Humans and chimps and gorillas in the same category. The humans don't care. The gorillas don't care. The chimps don't care.
Interestingly, what is the difference between
will not even try to mate with the humans? The chimps.
What is the
chimps
difference?
Look for another chimp.
Yep.
We can do a whole program on that. The difference is.
That's an interesting point, because while it's broadly true that most animals tend to try to reproduce with members of their other species, there are lots that don't. Dogs, for example, hump your leg, hump the armchair, hump a fire hydrant, whatever. They'll try anything. Yeah. But also humans. I mean, there's so many jokes that involve sheep, including ones based on the Bible. Adam trying to find a suitable helper and all of that crap. Like, humans will literally try to reproduce with anything with a hole of the right size and shape.
So, Dr. Mark, as the fellow Aussie, I'm going to have to refrain from stating the obvious after that comment from Dr. Ember around sheep. So we'll just zip that one up. We'll zip that one up.
Right. Well, technically, I thought that was more a New Zealand thing, Dr. Ian. Yeah. I'm not sure.
You just let the cat out the bag.
Yeah. I'm sorry to all the New Zealand. That's my fault.
Yeah, that was a good joke, guys.
Wow.
We appreciate our Kiwi friends. Please don't murder us
absolutely.
in our sleep, because we know, the Nerf guns are out of control over there. Not like the U.S. at all. No.
Between humans and chimps. Donnie did a whole show on the chromosome fusion thing. And did you write a book about it, Donnie, or an article about it, chromosome fusion? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to read that?
Oh, Donnie wrote another book, folks. Remember what happened the last time we got our hands on one of Donnie's books, which he immediately said, "Oh no, I didn't have anything to." Never mind that there's 3 authors listed, and he's one of them. No, he had nothing to do with that.
No.
So, maybe I'll put that on my Amazon wish list if anybody wants to see another 9-hour debunking monstrosity.
And it's so bad that Donnie puts these books on Amazon and he thinks it makes him an authority on it. It's so bad. Like, Dr. Dan Stern Cardinal got a copy of his ERV book and it was just awful, like just filled with basic. It's more just I think it was designed because these papers say that the code segments in genetics have benefits, therefore it's designed. Like, why?
Oh, I can't reach my copy from here. Did the book that Dr. Dan looked at have clickable links in the paper copy?
No. This was the actual book kind of thing. Yeah.
It's just top quality,
Mhm.
Oh goodness. Anyway, I do digress.
If the complex chromosomes fuse together, that's not evidence that it happens by chance. Nobody wrote the code. You could have a typographical error in a print shop where you end up with half of one book stuck to the other half of a different book. That's a printing error, okay? Mm-hmm. And the storyline may or may not follow. But your analogy is so silly. Carry that plant with you, please, okay? You're saying a lot of nothing here. To see apes and humans and chimpanzees.
We're not going to get anywhere here because Kent, I can't get you.
Ian, I just want to make, okay, we're going to do this. Kent, finish your thoughts there. And then Ian, let's throw it back to you. You are in the affirmative. We've only got 15 minutes left. So let's give you the opportunity to pick another major topic.
I've got one more to kind of talk to Ken about, but yeah.
Okay,
so,
Kent,
so Ken,
let's
finish.
get you. Okay, Kent,
you wanted Kent to finish?
Finish your thoughts there. I just want to make sure there's not too much over talk, just because I want the audience to hear both sides. Kent, go ahead, finish your thoughts you're making.
I admit that Ian thinks he's an ape. I admit that.
I am an ape.
I do. Okay, maybe I do not think I am. Okay.
I'm also an animal.
I'm also attracted by gravity, and so is my coffee cup. That's proof we're related.
Yes, you are related because you both have mass. I fail to see your point.
Yeah, I mean, we call it relativity for a reason.
Nice. Yeah, nice comeback. You both have mass, which is what causes gravity. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Dig it.
I know you failed to see the point. Give us your next one.
All right, so just let me quickly summarize this. So Kent seems to be applying different and inconsistent standards between the two when he defines a kind. He's unable to articulate why a deer kind or the human/ape kind are different, except that it's obvious or that there are huge. He's never articulated. He's just trying to appeal to basically it's obvious. It's eyeball science basically. So let me kind of move on anyway. Like I said, I don't think Kent will agree, but I think we can all agree that I don't think Kent's answer was very satisfactory, and he's applying different inconsistent standards. All right, so next I want to talk a little bit about genetics. Kent, as I said, Kent, I think you've got too much chlorine in your gene pool, so this might be relevant. All right, genetics. So I think this is probably a very strong evidence for common ancestry.
Actually,
and I want to bring up a whole bunch.
I think his pool's a saltwater pool at the moment. Dr. Ian
killed all the genes. Do you think he gets it? Because sometimes he just sits there, and I just don't know whether it's hitting home. So maybe I'm just too subtle.
It doesn't matter. It's funny to me. Yeah. I don't care. It's really funny. I don't know what's funnier, that he does get it and is angry, or he doesn't get it and is oblivious to like chlorine in your gene pool. I don't know which is funnier. Either way works for me.
Okay.
Good stuff. Hell yeah. And because I'm tangentful today, we got some fan mail. We got a little bit of praise. Our new friend Austin considers us paragons of wisdom. So yeah, I appreciate that. Yay.
Thank you.
Bunch of different types of genetic elements that you're probably familiar with, and I know Kent The first one is you're quite familiar with ERVs or endogenous retroviruses. And just quickly for the audience, this is viral insertions integrated into the human genome, makes up about 8% of the human genome. And from what we can see, it's about 3,200 ERVs, of which 96% are shared with chimpanzees.
And for those of you who consider DNA to be a computer code, consider these as DLCs. Yeah.
Hmm.
And the key thing I want to note here, Ken, is it's the same ERV genetic sequence in the same chromosome, in exactly the same location of the chromosome across, humans and chimpanzees.
Well, you were
I
making
just
that
don't want to talk about ERVs. Pardon?
Okay, yeah, you are making that statement that it's the exact same one. I don't know that. I've never studied that. I didn't look at them under the
Of course, you
microscope.
never studied it, so
Even if
you can check it. Okay, and
I
we won't take
will.
time to debate, but you can check it. But I'm telling you, it is. And if you disagree with it, then that's fine. But I'm glad you can. I'm glad you're answering honestly and saying you don't know
Okay.
because you don't know. Okay,
And-
so
and glad you-
ERVs.
ERVs.
I'm going to jump in. Ian, go ahead, Ken. Let's try and keep it free flowing rather than
Okay.
too many long responses. Go ahead, Kat. Feel free to respond.
ERVs were discovered in the late 60s, okay? First evidence of ERVs was found in the 60s and 70s. Here, you can read it for yourself. 1965, the first reported finding of an EIV. On the biological level, the main...
An
Did he
EIV.
say an EIV?
I
He
think
sure
he said
did.
EIV, yeah. He
A
can't even
little
read
Freudian
himself.
slip there. It's fine. It's fine.
difference is bacteria are free-living cells, while viruses are non-living collection of molecules that need a host to survive. I think the ERVs were designed very nicely by a wise creator to do all kinds of cool things. We now know not all viruses are bad. We know there are beneficial viruses present in our gut, skin, and blood that kill undesirable bacteria and more dangerous viruses. There's a war going on. Millions of viruses in the world laid end to end would stretch 100 million light years.
That's to your point earlier, Dr. Ember.
Yeah, let's just line up all the DNAs from the what do we mean? Millions of viruses? Are we talking like every kind of virus? Every type of virus? Every what was the other term? Baraminology is wild. But what do we mean? And what is the relevance of that? And it, in fairness to Kent, it's true. Not all viruses are harmful. Just like every kind of parasite, there are some that pursue that particular reproductive strategy of being beneficial, and so creating something sort of like a symbiotic relationship. They're still parasitic, but they offer a benefit
Yes.
that sometimes offsets that parasitism. It's less common with viruses than, say, with bacteria, like our gut bacteria. You know, they're using us as hosts, they're using us for food, but at the same time, we get a benefit. They help us digest stuff, and so they can stay because they're paying rent.
Yes. And that's the whole point of symbiosis. Both organisms benefit from the relationship, but it doesn't mean they knowingly are working together. That's the whole point. What you've got to understand about ERVs is he's just talking about viruses. Now, there's a subset called retroviruses that will insert itself into the genetic sequence of the host, and then it uses that host's replication mechanisms for its DNA, which is then transcribed into RNA, to actually propagate itself. HIV is an example of this, right? So what causes AIDS is the HIV, the immunovirus. They basically will copy themselves into your cells, and then you will replicate it for the virus. You basically are providing the mechanism for spreading that virus. Now, the whole thing about endogenized retroviruses is that basically, the first thing you've got to understand is it's got to happen in a germline cell, a sperm or an egg. And we know this because that virus, unlike something called semantic transmission, where one cell infects another, like just say you have HIV and one cell will infect another, well, the insertion of that virus will be in a random spot on the gene. Okay, so it'll just be one of these target sites and it'll insert itself into there. We know that it was the germline, the sperm or the egg, because that that virus exists in the same place in every cell of your body. So if you think about how an egg, for instance, develops from the womb, it'll split into 2, then 4, then 6, then 8. So if you get the very first cell infected, then it will spread, it will be duplicated to every single cell going forward. So we know that that's what's happened, because that's the only way to get it there. Now, Kent wants to say, hey, it's you know, just a virus kind of thing. No, we're talking very specific. So the question is, if this is a virus, like let's just assume that the scientists are right and this is a virus, and it's in every cell of our bodies in the same place and the same virus, and every cell of the chimpanzee in the same place and the same virus, how did it get there? Because it cannot have been just, you know, the chimpanzee got this virus and then spread it around its body. It has to have come from the germline. The only way that can happen is at one point, us and the chimpanzee had the same germline cell. It explains it perfectly.
Yeah. And we found ERVs that exist, the same virus,
Yep,
in other species in different places, which is another marker that at the time the infection occurred, we'd already diversified from them. And that's another way we can trace back through evolutionary timescales to determine when things branched off.
Yep.
It's
so
fascinating.
we track these viruses, and the wild thing is, and here's the wild part, we share some of the same endogenous retroviruses, these fragments of viruses that were inserted into the germline, with some fish. Like there are fish with some of the same fragments in the same rough location and the same virus that we have. Of course, there's been a lot of mutations since then, but we can still see the fragments of us being the same species from the same germline. It's wild. And what we've noticed as we categorize these viruses, because don't forget, they change as well, and they get, you know, changed as mutation happens, because there's nothing saying that that virus can't mutate, because it's your body's replication process doing it. If the body can screw up your own DNA, it can certainly screw up a segment of viral DNA. So basically, as it replicates, we can trace the changes down through this perfect nested hierarchy of these viral elements changing along with the organisms. And so we can say, hey, look, we know that ancestor of this virus was this one, and we can find that in here and have the changes. It fits in beautifully. And they just want to wave it away and say, no, God created it like that. That's their answer.
Yep.
Hell yeah. I'm slightly distracted. Yeah, we'll continue while I read things.
Living harmlessly on our body outnumber human cells 10-1, playing a vital role. Viral genome junk hits the trash. Donna, you did a great article on ERVs. They are designed as part of our system. And the fact that chimpanzees might have the ERVs in the same place might prove that we both live on the same planet and breathe the same air and drink the same water. And we need these same ERVs to do the same thing. I bet chimpanzees have flexor muscles to pull their fingers in and extender muscles to pull them out, just like we do. Wow. That's not proof of relationship. It's a good design that works. I bet Ford and Chevy trucks both have round tires. That's a good design that works. So I think that they're finding out now, as they discover more about ERVs in the last 50 years, they're finding, wow, ERVs are not evidence for evolution. They're not, let's see, junk DNA was the article I had on that. I just read about that today. Okay, it's been a busy day for me. They play key roles in controlling immune response, another important process necessarily for the survival of mammals. Maybe we have them in the same place because we both have to survive in the same world. It is not proof of common ancestry.
Okay,
Ian.
are you just going to explain what ERVs are? Is that what your intention is?
Endogenous
Because that wasn't where I was going.
No,
It's not where I was
said
going with my argument. You can explain what ERVs are to the audience, and that's fine. If that's what you want to do, I can give you some more time. But that's not the point of my argument.
I'm explaining why they're not evidence for evolution. They're evidence of a great design. They're endogenous
okay, and
retroviruses.
I will rebut that. Just give me a couple
Okay.
more minutes, because I know we always talk about, I know I've seen you talk about ERVs, I've seen Donnie talk about ERVs, but ERVs only make up 8% of the genome. All right, so let's talk about the other genetic elements that are rarely talked about. So ALU elements. So the difference between ERVs and ALU elements, these are small stretches of DNA sequences that have the ability to jump positions within the genome. All right. They make up about 11% of the human genome, or about 1 million ALU elements. Interestingly, when we kind of compare these ALU elements with chimpanzees, gorilla, and rats, we see a decreasing amount of shared ALU elements, as if they were sharing common ancestry. So 95% of them shared with humans and chimpanzees, about 90% of them are shared between humans and gorillas, about 50% are shared with rats. And if you build
I think,
a
Dr.
phylogeny
Mark,
tree,
this is kind of what you were saying before about the fish. And it was kind of where I was kind of going that, I don't want to just talk about ERVs. There's just a whole bunch of genetic elements that make up the genome that has exactly the same issues around sharing the same location, the size, and the chromosomes of ERVs. And they all show a decreasing similarity as you go through your distant common ancestor. Does that kind of make sense? So Mark was saying that with ERVs, some of them are shared with fish because we all evolved from fish, right? So I already went back to rats. So I pulled up the data for chimpanzees, gorillas, and rats. So I didn't go as far as fish, but you'll see this decreasing similarity. And Mark kind of made the point earlier about the fish, which is exactly in line with this anyway.
Mm-hmm. I enjoy fish for so many reasons, because first of all, fish don't exist. There's no such thing as a fish. But also, we're all still fish. It's fun. But ALUs are so great. They're an even better fit for the Lego analogy we were talking about earlier, because they are modular. The whole thing can just move to a different section. Yeah. And so we see the similarities are another way to demonstrate ancestry in exactly the same way we do paternity and maternity tests. We say, oh, this is this much similar and this much different. So this is a sibling. This is a third cousin. This is, someone from the same country, but no direct relationship. That sort of thing. That's how we do that. And it's the same general idea, but on a species level. And it's so fucking cool.
It is really
and I did talk about that, Dr. Ember, later as well, that, because there's so many ALU elements that we actually know, when you do genetic tests, we know which geographic location that your ancestors come from. So I put up a chart around where we can pinpoint which part of Africa you're from, whether it's Kenya, Ethiopia, etc., because we can see that in Ethiopia, they have a set of similar ALUs that are a little bit different than in Kenya, that's a little bit different from wherever. So if you have that particular set, we know your ancestors came from Kenya. We know it came from Ethiopia or South Africa. So it's that accurate. There's like 1 million of them. So you can actually pinpoint the geographic location with that kind of level of detail.
And I just want to say, just from my specialty field, my fellow doctors, that an ALU is an arithmetic logic unit. And big shout out to all my computer nerds in the chat that will understand that one.
Nerd. This is how you summon the Sinister Porpoise,
That's
I'm actually
true,
kind of surprised we haven't seen Sinister yet.
See that humans and chimpanzees probably split off from a common ancestor with gorillas, and then there was a common ancestor between human and chimpanzees which split off, and that's why we're sharing this, step hierarchy of ALU elements. So that's one point of it. So that this is I'm not asking you to describe what ALU elements are. That's not the point of this argument. So I'll go to the next point. Line elements, long interspersed nuclear elements. These are also very similar to ALU elements in that they can change positions or jump between the genome. The only difference between this or signs, which are short interspersed nuclear elements, of which ALU belongs in that category, is that lines can jump by themselves, whereas ALU
well, I will be buggered. We finally found the lines of code.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it!
I'm not entirely certain that was what he was referring to. Can we put on the side? I really want to see the rest of this slide. I really do. Would that be okay?
Yeah, just let it go through.
Oh, you mean
I can't see
move
the
us
slide.
over?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually I could probably do this. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm fine with that. I'm fine
Oh
with
yeah.
that.
We're ninjas
Can't see your
now.
beautiful
No one can
faces.
no one
Woo!
can find us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Requires assistance to do that jumping. Now, line elements make up 20% of the human genome, and they are longer. So they're, whilst there's 1 million of ALU makes up 11%, it's because they're shorter DNA sequences. Lines are much longer, so there's only 800,000 of them. And if you look at what's shared between chimpanzees, gorillas, and rats, 85% of them are shared with chimpanzees, 85% again are shared with gorillas, and about 60% are shared with rats. Now they're so accurate. Okay, so I'll go through this very quickly. They're so accurate that not only can we tell, where the common ancestry is split from by the shared elements of extant species today, is that they're so accurate that we can tell when we do genetic testing that your great grandfather or whatever was born in a part of, and this is the diagram on the bottom right. We know which country and which, to the level, which city that your ancestor was born, whether it's in Egypt or whether it's Morocco, because of the shared ALUs and all these elements between the people there. It is that accurate that we can pinpoint geography. So getting to the point of what I'm trying to bring out here is that ARVs make up 8% of the human genome, and we know less than 1% of them are functional. And I know that you've seen papers that kind of show this, and of what is it, the Golo gene, or there's a couple of genes that creation's
There's
left
a
us
koala gene that I
on,
was talking about.
and
I was
it's
trying
the
to remember.
only gene.
Koalas have their own genes?
No, I think it sounds like koala. I can't remember exactly. It's the one that Donna keeps on bringing up. That's kind of critical to embryonic development, and that's the I think I did a look in this. There's only about 12 or 13 papers that have identified 12 or 13 ERVs that are actually functional. So 12 or 13 out of like 3,200. So when creation is saying they're all functional, no. We've only identified a slight percentage of them that are functional, and the rest, according to, if you look at Dr. Dan's channel, all those rest of ERVs are actually so degraded that they can't actually do anything anyway. So yes, there's a smidgen that we have found that function, and the rest of them are just so degraded there is no possibility for them to actually do something. They might actually be functional in terms of the ENCODE definition that something happens, but they don't do anything. So biochemically, something might happen, but that biochemical doesn't actually code for protein. It's not a gene expression. It's not a regulatory. It doesn't do anything at all.
And if you had any doubts that these ERVs are viruses, there was an experiment called Phoenix Rising, where we took one of the latest types of endogenous retroviruses, one that hadn't been fixed in the genome yet, and we basically changed its genetic structure to just changed a few codes to make it resemble a virus, and it came back to life and started infecting other cells. Now, it wasn't particularly strong because it was degraded, but we basically resuscitated this centuries-old virus, and it started to infect other cells again.
Yep.
It is absolutely a virus.
Yep.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And first of all, curse you, genetic entropy, and John Sanford. That's why they're so. It's all his fault. Him and his gene gun. That's why. Tiny pedantic point. You've got the greater than symbol in front of the 1%. When you're saying they're less than 1% functional. I'm just saying so to show that I'm paying attention.
Oh, damn it! You're right. You're absolutely right.
It's a tiny detail. I'm just showing I'm paying attention.
No.
And to answer Sterling's question, are ALUs the same thing as transposons? No, transposons are they are discrete genetic clumps, but they're predominantly in bacteria, possibly exclusively in bacteria, that can be moved in whole from chromosomes to plasmids to there's another type of thing, but they don't have to stay in the actual DNA. They can go off and be their own functional thing. And that's what makes them special. But as far as I know, it's either mostly or exclusively bacteria that do that. Yeah. I'm like double checking my brain to see if there's anything else. There probably is, but nothing's coming out. So yeah, we can go on for now.
That they bring up. Less than 1% of ERVs have been shown to be functional. The rest have not been. ALU elements, 11% of the human genome, less than 1% have shown to have any function at all. Line elements, 20%, less than 1% are functional. That's a total of 39% of the human genome, of which 95% of them are shared between chimpanzees and gorillas. And we're talking about the exact DNA sequences in the same chromosomes, in the same location of those chromosomes. That's how we kind of make.
Ooh. Henrietta Lacks, the immortal woman, because of her illegally taken cancer cells. That's a whole thing, and it's important because it's not just important for cancer studies or cell duplication studies, but also for the way our society treats people. Because her cells were taken without her consent or her family's, and yeah, as Maya says, it is a whole thing, and it's important to not only know about it for the science reasons, but for the social reasons, because of the racism, because of the sexism, because of the systemic oppression that goes into the fact that that's a thing. So please, for future reference, remember her name, Henrietta Lacks. Thank you. That's my social justice piece for this evening.
Measure how similar they are. So my question to you, Ken, is very simple. When you have common ancestry and you have evolution, it explains this perfectly. We know that the common ancestor between humans/chimps and gorillas split out, and that's why humans and chimps have closer similarity than humans and gorillas. And we know the common ancestor then of humans and chimpanzees are split out, and that's why there's more common between humans and chimpanzees. And that's how we build that nested hierarchy. Now, my question to you is simple. How do you explain this? I mean, I've heard that it's God created this way. Well, it's interesting, because why would God create something where less than 1% of it is not functional? I've heard, well, it was all there, but they've since been degraded because it's the fall of man or whatever. Well, that's interesting. Why did they degrade in exactly the same way between these three different species? And I'll focus on chimpanzees, gorillas, and humans. And I wouldn't even talk about rats. So let's focus on those three. Why did they degrade in that exact same way? And I've also heard, I think even Donnie brings this up, that there are mutational hotspots that are likely where mutations happen. And that's why you've got these mutations that happen in these hotspots. So the question is, fine, but we're not talking about 2 or 3 genes. We're talking about 39% of the human genome, which is 3 billion base pairs here, right? We're talking about,
which would stretch a radius across the solar system.
That's right. But that's the point. I didn't really want to talk about the science as to why it was around. Okay, forget the why. Let's assume, whatever it is the question is, why do they show this similarity in terms of nested hierarchy? Explain that, because I think that's the biggest point. Like, who cares what ERVs are? So yes, it's all this stuff, but that's not I think the important thing is, why does it look this way? Why does ERVs, and forget ERVs, why does ALU elements, forget that, why do line elements, that you can throw in pseudogenes and all the other stuff as well that we know. I didn't touch on that, but I just picked these three. Why do they just show this beautiful nested hierarchy? That kind of proves common descent.
Yeah, multiple lines of evidence even, which is fascinating, because that's sort of the whole thing with evolution, is there are multiple lines of evidence. It's one of the reasons we're comfortable saying we know, not just we think or signs seem to point toward. It's everything we have, literal mountains. If you take all the papers on all the different topics that go into modern evolutionary theory and you stack them up, it might stretch across the solar system 2 or 3 times, who knows? But it's a huge pile, and not a bit of it contradicts the model.
Yep.
It's just mind-blowing that anybody can stand there and say they love science and they disregard that. It's as we often say, but it bears repeating, there's more evidential demonstration of the reality of evolution than we have for fucking gravity, which Kent just mentioned earlier he believes in. Wowzers.
Yeah, I think that the steel man them, and I mean, I you know, I'm going to try. Basically, I think they will just sort of say, well, all of them had function. We just don't know what the function is yet. And it's sort of like, but we've done knockout tests to knock out genes, and they literally do nothing. Like they literally do nothing. So it's sort of just a matter of faith on their part that, oh, it all has a function. We just don't know what it is. It's like, well, how do you show that?
They definitely do say that. We haven't discovered it yet.
Yeah.
Evolution's a tinkerer, but, you know, if there's no advantage in removing the broken stuff that does nothing, then why would you bother? I mean, we actually do see that, right? Like telomeres, they're not junk DNA in the way we used to think, but one of the functions they have is protecting the coding alleles from damage in reproduction, you know, during cellular division and so forth. That was, at some point in the distant past, leftover mutated scrap DNA that no longer had a proper function. But the cells that moved those parts that didn't actually do much to the ends to protect the coding parts had a huge survival advantage. And so that kind of became SOP, not by a decision, not by a design, because we see it manifest differently across various species, like everything else that's an adaptation. But there is an advantage, so it got selected for. Wild. Yeah, often the junk does have a function. But sometimes it's also just like our vitamin C production. You know, we have the gene for it. It's just broken. It's a single point mutation, and it didn't get selected against in our ancestors because they didn't need to produce their own vitamin C. But now here we are, susceptible to scurvy and shit. Yeah. I'm just full of rants this evening, aren't I?
That's good.
No, I love it. I love it. Love the rant.
Yeah.
Love the hat.
39%
Thank you. This one's my favorite.
of them that are matching exactly between human chimpanzees, human gorillas, human rats, obviously to a lesser degree. So I'll stop it there, Ken, because I want you to explain not what an ERV is or what an ALU element is why do you see this very nice nested hierarchy of genetic elements, whether it's ERV.
One is about to interrupt.
Like, explain that from a creationist perspective.
Okay. I want to keep it equally timed, so we're going to give Kent an uninterrupted response to answer your question and arguments. Ian, go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, go for it, Kent.
Okay, there's a very complex program for computers called spell check that's able to jump around in the document and find misspelled words. Wow, that's pretty cool. Somebody designed that program to go around and find misspelled words. Maybe somebody designed this incredibly genetic code to go around and find mistakes or correct them. And your statement that only 1% are functional, you certainly don't know that. You said 1% have been shown to be functional. You know, just 200 years ago, they had a list of 180 vestigial organs that the body didn't need because they didn't know what they were for. They thought your appendix.
For a guy who talks about how evolution is a religion, Kent does a whole lot of fucking preaching.
Mm-hmm. What function does your wisdom teeth have, Ken?
To kill you.
I
say as a person who had to have them removed. Right?
Certainly not wisdom. He had them all removed. That's why it's got no wisdom.
Aha! We found the problem. I mean, I've had all of mine removed too, but that's because they were trying to murder me, and the body parts that try to murder me have got to go. They're not playing nice.
That was the problem. Up there, but you had too much wisdom. They had to.
I was overdosed. I see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And your tonsils and your tailbone were all vestigial. You don't need them anymore in the nictitating membrane. Now they know the function. Maybe they just haven't studied it enough yet, Ian. So to say that there's 1% and therefore conclude that we're related to a gorilla, that's quite a leap of faith. And you do have great faith, much more faith than I have, okay? And you just...
If it were one, that might be, oh, it's just a coincidence. But...
But do you notice he's not explaining it? Do you notice he's
just calling it silly.
He's just saying, hey, I don't believe it. That is just saying, hey, I don't believe it. Okay, but how do you explain all of this? You're just basically saying, well, nah.
Yep, exactly. In the beginning, I basically pushed over that and said, your answer is magic. because we were talking
Yeah.
about abiogenesis, and I
Yeah.
said, look, at least we as science-minded people are trying to find the steps for abiogenesis. You just gone, forget that. It's magic. It's God. I don't need to know. So that's a
Right.
difference between I think science denialism and people who want to understand how the world actually works.
Yeah, and it's wild to me. I mean, I understand how people who've never really thought about it can confuse evolution with abiogenesis, but this is another thing that's obvious even to small children, because I remember discussing evolution with other school kids in elementary school, and they'd be like, well, it's either evolution or God or whatever. And I'm like, no, you could absolutely have life kicked off by God's giant stone carving finger reaching down and touching the primordial ocean and going, poof, let there be life, and still have evolution. That works just fine, which shows us abiogenesis is a completely separate question.
Yes.
Crazy stuff. Yes, Sydney brought up and a religion ALU or stupid ALU. I don't know that they're necessarily ALUs. I mean, first of all, stupid relative intelligence is a complex factor that goes into a whole bunch of things. But there are traits that contribute to a higher overall degree of religiosity that have to do with neural structure and the way neural networks come together and effectively the way the brain is wired. Some people are literally more prone to religious thinking. It's kind of fascinating. It's not a single ALU that does it, but we can find some of the things that do it, which is so much fun. And Ian Chen, who's that? I think we've heard of that person somewhere. I don't know.
I don't know, but he looks. God, he's damn good looking. Can someone introduce me to him?
Yeah.
That's true.
That is a good looking man right there. Absolutely.
For real. We should
What a guy.
invite that person on sometime. Anyway,
Absolutely.
Ian sends a super chat, a $5 reduce. Thank you so much. And says, thanks for having me on, Ember and Mark. I'm having so much fun. We are also, well, I don't want to speak for Mark, but I am having quite a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm having a blast. This is awesome.
Right.
Like, seriously, what a guy. That Ian, what a guy. I'm sorry, Dr. Ian, what a guy. What
Yes.
a guy.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Mark. Thank you, Dr. Ember.
Absolutely. Hey, Ian is an official doctor because it's Ian Chen official. We're just internet people, but Ian is an official doctor.
No, I did that with Kent Hovind, changed his name to Kent Hovind official. That's a bit of a jab at him.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Hell yeah.
Just said at the end of your diatribe, there are 3 billion base pairs. Ian, do you understand how complicated the DNA code is? You think it happened by chance. Nobody designed this DNA code. 3 billion lines of code, and nobody wrote it.
Nobody thinks it
Lines
happened
of
by
code?
chance.
Lines
Not
of
really lines of code.
Does-
Yeah, it's not really that, but he doesn't understand what base pairs are, whatever.
I know. I'm like they're just pairs. I mean, if you want to break it into code, it's literally binary because
Yeah, exactly.
there's the 4, but they only bond together one with the other. So it's either possibility 1 or possibility 2. That's all there is.
And that's
Your
the
own
one
one.
thing. I'll segue here again slightly, and I'll be quick. But that's the one thing I never understood, because they've done analysis on putting the entire human genome into binary code, and it fits, I think, on a CD. Like, it's 700 megabits or something. It fits on a CD. So when he says things like, "Oh, it's more complicated than a shuttle," I dare say a space shuttle would have more information in it than even the software that runs a space shuttle has got to be more than just one CD worth of information. Does that kind of make sense? So, yeah, I never understood why he always says a space shuttle is, its DNA is more complicated than a space shuttle. By any objective measure, it's not.
I get it. You'd have to come up with some interesting ways of measuring. I'm sure you could if you really tried, but yeah, that's an interesting point.
And think about this. It's certainly not more complicated than the internet. That has way more complexity. Like, if you look at the internet, it is insanely complex. Like, billions and billions, millions and millions of servers all working in concert kind of thing. Like, you know, it's not even close to how much like difference in code there is. So we can create complex code. That's
actually,
fine.
that is actually a really good allegory there, Dr. Mark. Because if I think of the internet, it wasn't designed by one person. It's almost like it's a bit of an evolved organism, because it's so complex, but it's not simple. And there are so many things that kind of don't go wrong, or that kind of goes wrong, or there's kind of like backdoor ways to kind of do stuff that you're trying to do. It's definitely not efficient. So to me, I think that's an excellent example. Internet is like life. It wasn't created. It's almost like it evolved from something simpler to what it is now, because it's just not simple.
Yeah, we kind of like distinguish between what's called top-down design and bottom-up design. So top-down is somebody going and like what Kent's talking about, just making everything. Bottom-up is kind of, you have these separate systems everywhere and you kind of just mash them together. They just start working in concert. And what we see is, like you said, a lot of inefficiencies, a lot of things going wrong, a lot of, you know, backdoors and things that don't work quite right because they were never top-down designed in the first place. Yeah. And evolution is like that. It's just all of these systems just start, you know, viruses start working.
It's a good analogy. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit like that. But, you know, just be careful, because they can go, oh, yes, but the internet was, you know, human made. It was designed kind of thing, and use that as proof. And it's like, well, yes, the internet was designed, the processes were designed, but, you know, we don't, you know, we don't think that's the case for these organic units. We think that it was just natural selection. But I want to really say it has to absolutely be pushed back on that it was just random chance, as he's trying to say. Nobody says it was random chance. Nobody says that there wasn't a guiding process behind it. The guiding process was just survival and replication. It's just natural selection. It's not random. And and the thing is, Kent's been told this 1,000,000 times, and he still repeats the same lie over and over. He doesn't care. You know,
at least 370 times.
Right. People will show him how it's not random. Like, if you start selecting stuff out, that's not random. There is a determined path of the animals or the plants or whatever the organism that will survive. It's not just a random chance. Now, there is a factor of randomness. Genetic drift is random events causing stuff, but that is not the main process that works in evolution. It is natural selection. And depending on the environment, you will get one organism succeeding over another. That's not random.
Hell yeah. A little bit of housekeeping. First of all, Left-Handed Jedi gifting 5 Ember ships. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We need more Embers up in here so we can one of these days unlock another emoji and, depending on how the members vote, possibly get us an actual banhammer, which would be pretty cool. Those went to Dean, Wim VDB. Words are hard. Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith, Gazalem Ale, and Brandon Bone. Congratulations, folks. Yay on you. Enjoy all the fun custom emojis voted on by the members, and all the other perks that come with membership. And also, we got a super chat from Sydney Raptor, $2 dues, and John says, Dr. Ian, you've got appearance fee wrong. So yeah, that's fun. And on a somewhat related to the discussion, to bring things back, you know what else has 3 billion individual data points? The King James Version of the Bible. It contains 3,116,480 letters. Shit, the joke doesn't work if it's not in the same order of magnitude. Never mind. But the point is, that is supposedly written by God, and it's got 26 possible, well, 27 if you count a space, and more if you count punctuation. 3 million characters compared with the 3 billion in human DNA that only have one or the other. Most peculiar. Most peculiar. But I did read that wrong, so the joke works better if it's the same number of letters. Details. Details matter.
How can't you see the folly of that? I don't know. Donnie, I said I'd give an hour and a half. I got to leave at 4 o'clock in the morning. At least I got audience questions, but I don't think he's given any evidence to make me conclude that this is part of science, that humans should be.
It's a good thing that isn't what he was trying to present today, Kent. Kent wasn't paying any attention.
He didn't answer the question. Did you notice?
Yeah, and absolutely, and he's provided plenty of evidence. It's just Kent sort of hand waves it away. He doesn't listen to it. He just has his like charts and his red herrings. He hasn't answered any of the how did this happen in your model, except the one that he wants to say but can't, which is my book said God did it. That's it. That's his answer.
Yep.
Book said a thing.
What's his evidence that God did it? The book says he did. Kent's never seen his God do this. Kent's never seen his God design a retrovirus. He doesn't explain why God made retroviruses in humans and chimpanzees look exactly. He doesn't explain any of that. He just says, well, I find it, I don't want to believe it. So what?
And Dr. Mark, this is why all his debates is always pushing it back onto us. It's always you need to provide the evidence, and he refuses to kind of argue the other way around. So it's one of his things. If you want to debate Kent, you've got to have to accept the rules that he will never defend his position, and it's up to you to defend evolution. Where he just sits back and tries to poke holes in it or ignore it, as you can kind of see from this debate today.
Yeah, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. John brings up Bible nonsense, contradictions, clearly not intelligently designed. But since you mention it, I recently came across, as you know, I like to collect references and save data and so forth. And I put a lot of it on my website, betterthanumber.com, where there's links to all my other shows and ways you can support the show. And also, if you're new here, take a minute and subscribe. It's free and it helps support the channel. It makes me feel validated in my efforts here. But I don't yet have enough resources to put up a whole page of the website just with counter-apologetic stuff. Not useful internet tools, anyway. I may work on that as time allows. But I do have one thing for you that I found very fun, is an upgraded version of the accumulated list of biblical contradictions. This is from lyingforjesus.org. And it not only gives you a cross-reference list of all the different contradictions in the Bible, but it'll bring up specific verses and show you how they contradict. And there's a whole wealth of information built in there. So if you're up for that kind of thing, maybe bookmark that so you can find it later. It's a lot of fun. I just thought I'd throw that out there. It's a value add for those of you who stuck around through the whole stream so far.
Be considered the same.
It's hard to give evidence when your response is, I don't believe it, because that's exactly what you said. So yes, we do know that only less than 1% of them is functional. We've done the test. Your answer to that is, I don't believe it. Yes, of course I know it. PhDs that have studied this know it. You know that it's not. So please tell me why you don't believe it. If I went and show you papers of it, your question is, I don't believe it, because you know more than them. That is your response to everything. Okay. You can't convince you can because you don't believe it. Your answer to that is, I don't believe it. And that's fine, but it's wrong.
If it could be shown, proven scientifically, that there are similar lines of code in apes and chimpanzees and humans, that proves a common designer wrote the code.
Well, he's guessing who the designer is. He's asserting who the designer is, but he's not entirely wrong. It demonstrates that the same process was behind it, which is evolution.
Yeah.
So, aside from doing that whole begging the question thing and inserting his own preferred answer, he's actually not wrong. He's just, adding his own bullshit on top.
And plus, even if there was a designer, it doesn't get you to a god. It does not get you to a God. Like, how do you know it wasn't aliens that came down and did all of this? Incredibly advanced aliens. Show me that's not the case.
Yeah, we love the now. A lot of people, they don't like the aliens. They just use it as it's a naturalistic explanation, which is true.
Yeah.
But then you have to ask where the aliens came from. And
sure.
it's wild to me that people have a problem with this, because whether you posit it's aliens or it's a god, if you do God, okay, where did the God come from? And then you get all the special pleading and the hand waving. Oh, it doesn't make sense to ask where a God came from. Well, why?
Yeah, but I like the which
demonstrate
God
that?
is it? I like the response where it's okay, fine, which God? You know, which God did it?
It could be the witch god. Now, we actually can answer that question, as everyone who's been around here for a little while knows. Gods do have a source. They come from Nil, the great not god and creator of creator gods, that big old purple butterfly up in the corner there, flickering in and out of existence, as not gods often do. In the very beginning, Nil came through, being the great not god and creator of creator gods, created the creator gods, which canonically were then eaten by Lisa the rainbow giraffe, who then pooped out the universe. And it's all perfectly consistent. We have an answer and theists don't, so checkmate. Haha.
And just for anybody watching, I don't believe that it was aliens. I just say, like, that's an alternative to a god, but he doesn't believe that it could be, yeah.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. And Maya, of course, makes a really good point. I don't like how dismissive everyone is being about the obvious answer, aliens. And there, I know Maya's making a bit of a joke in reference to her own show, which happens tomorrow at 9:30 Eastern, Bad Science Sunday, one of the best things on YouTube. Tons of fun. Her and this weasel pretending to be a physicist, often with guests, debunk and take apart even more ridiculous characters than Kent Hovind. It's a blast. You should totally check it out if you haven't seen it. Her channel is spelled exactly like her name that you see in chat there. However, you can make a pretty strong case that it actually was aliens, insofar as stuff not from Earth. To wit, we found nucleobases, every kind of nucleobase in space. We found almost every kind of amino acid. Now, this isn't a case of transpermia, that life rained down from the heavens. But the point is that life seems to just pop up everywhere, including on comets and asteroids. So why the hell wouldn't it pop up on Earth, where the ground is fertile, so to speak? And as Sydney says, we're all just figments of your imagination. It's true. It's true.
You're mate. You're seeing good evidence and coming to the wrong conclusion. You don't get it. It's just as much conclusion that there was a common designer of the code.
I know you've done a genetic test before. You've said it before, so we know. So if we use your example around, I think you mentioned that your ancestors come from Norway or something. Is that right? So we can tell from that because of these genetic elements, right? So we can tell that your ancestors come from Norway because we can look and sample all the people around Norway, and we can compare their ALU elements and line elements with you, and kind of say, well, it's so similar to these people in Norway that your ancestor must have been from Norway. Okay, so do you understand how nested hierarchy works from a very simple concept of shared ancestry? Do you understand what I'm saying here?
And I'd be willing to bet $10 that all the ancestors were human. That does not prove we're related to a sunflower and a snake and a banana.
And
this is where you got.
No, that in and of itself does not prove that. It's all the other shit that proves that. Ay.
This is where I take a dig at him.
It's kind of pinkish.
I take a dig at him here, I think. I just got bored of his crap.
Yeah, I mean, it is nearly the end. There's just over 60 seconds left. And Donnie's like, oh, we're gonna shift into the super chats. Which, I can't fault him. You gotta make your monies in some form or fashion. It certainly beats the hell out of used car sales. I actually tried that for a little while. didn't work out so great for me because I have a terrible time lying to people.
Dr. Ember. So remember when I said earlier when he called me an idiot, I said I'm not going to forget it. This is where I try to get my revenge back. This is where I try to get my revenge back.
Nice. I'm here for it.
A dish best served cold in the final moments of the debate. How dramatic.
Guys, we are all human. You're not saying anything I don't agree with. Yes, we're all human. But what I'm trying to say is that somewhere in Norway, Kent, and after this, we can agree to disagree and we can go straight to audience questions or whatever. But somewhere in Norway, a Norwegian village has lost their idiot. And I think, Kent, they should be looking for you. Anyway, so Donnie, we can move to questions and stuff because I don't think Kent's going to agree. His entire answer has been, I don't believe it. I don't believe the people that are more educated.
I love how Kent's smiling because a little more zazz on it, perhaps a little more spice.
I think now that I'm hearing it again, I feel like I should have a take two and deliver that one a little bit better than I did. But oh well, it's done.
It's all good. Kent is grinning, and he's grinning because he understood that one, so it landed.
The village idiot
Kent Hovind have done the study.
Yeah.
That's been your answer the whole night. So as long as people understand that, Kent, you have not brought any rebuttals to what I'm saying, except I don't believe it, or it's magic. That's the other one I love. It's magic.
Kent, you can have the last word and respond to.
And I just want to point out, as much as Kent tries to carry himself with authority, the man's a joke. In scientific, no one takes him seriously. Not even other Christians take him seriously. I don't think even AIG or Answers in Genesis or Creation Ministries International takes him seriously. They actually had an article with all of his arguments saying, do not use, I think they took it down now, but they used to have an article up, do not use these arguments, and they're all of Kent Hovind's. Not even other Christians take the man seriously, and I'm not surprised why. He is absolutely terrible, doesn't give any answers, he evades everything he's ever been asked. He's absolutely terrible.
Yeah. The relationships are complicated because AIG works a lot with Eric Hovind, so they've kind of chosen sides, and it's a whole thing. But Eric uses the same arguments Kent does because he stole his playlist, just like Kent stole his arguments from Gish and a couple other people. It's all theft. That's what it is. Robin Webster, member for 12 months. Robin has arrived. This handy dandy notebook that I've been waving around all evening. This was a present from Robin. Robin is a huge friend of the channel. She's been building a community everywhere she goes. She did an interview on my Sunday show, Atheist Lives, a few weeks back now. You can get to meet Robin there if you're not familiar. And I'll take that opportunity to plug tomorrow's show, the season finale of Atheist Lives, if you will, with our wonderful but all too often absent friend Nitty, who is also another escapist from a cult like the Apostate Sisters last week. But Nitty is not just a fun person, a Lego enthusiast who understands how it relates to DNA and things. But he's also he's been rebranding, he's been rebuilding his channel, he's been transforming. That's why it's Nitty 2.0. And so I'm excited to get to talk to Nitty finally at long last. I've known this dude for 2 years, and we've been on each other's channels and other people's channels together, and yet we haven't actually done a proper interview. So I'm excited for that, and I hope y'all come back for it tomorrow. Yeah, so that's my pitch for right now. I'm trying to do the proper YouTuber thing and actually market, because I'm always pitching other people's channels at random.
Yeah,
I need to pitch mine now and then. Yeah. Robin sends a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Robin. And says, hello from Gather with PC. Ooh. PC's hang. Link to the Gather, not my thing, Dr. J. Bundy's thing, but Gather is linked in the description for every video for like the past year. You should just drop by sometime. It's like a Zoom call, except there's a whole fucking world down there. It's amazing. Yeah.
the Bible says, answer not a fool according to his folly. So let's get to some audience questions, and I'm going to go to bed. I got to leave at 4:00. Go ahead.
But it's
All
only
right, gentlemen.
12:30. It's only 12:30.
No,
Nice.
not in Australia.
12:30 for you, Ian.
Yeah, exactly. I
The
was
sun
joking,
is
but
shining in Australia.
The world is round. Okay, it's dark on our side.
that we can agree with 100%.
Oh, ending on a point of agreement. Perfection.
That's
Perfection.
reachable,
I
yeah.
love it. And it's hard to find things to agree with you know, a person who doesn't even, I mean, he believes in gravity. You can say that for him, I suppose. But
Mhm.
wowzers, Kent is a tricky, unpleasant person. I'm using substitute. I'm being polite. I'm being ladylike. I'm being demure.
Nice. I would personally prefer if you're feisty. I do like a feisty woman. So, you know, be feisty as you want. Go for it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Final thoughts, folks. What are our impressions?
I really liked it. I thought that the pinning down of Kent Hovind was actually really good. Like you absolutely pinned him to these questions. I mean, he sent you off track on one or two parts. We've all done that. Like, don't feel bad about that, because when you actually got him pinned down and sort of to say you had no response besides it was God, I don't believe it, or magic. And that was it. That was his entire response. Arguments from incredulity. Saying by itself, I don't believe it, is not a sound way to address things. So when you're talking about stuff and you're saying, well, I don't think my wife is cheating on me because I don't believe it, that's not a good way to evaluate whether that's true or false. If you want to say, hey, I don't believe my wife's cheating on me because she, you know, does things for me, she isn't unhappy, she says she loves me, she's always around when I need her, you know, there's other reasons for basing that on. Just saying, well, I don't believe it isn't a good reason for something. Right? We want to be epistemologically sound. We want to have good reasons for what we believe. And so we give all of these evidence and sort of all we get is, well, I don't believe it. Well, I don't know what to do with that. And really, we all know why he doesn't believe it. It's because his book says something else.
Oh, yeah. As our friend Brentley from the Punk Apostate channel puts it. And it's another fun channel. Often morning streams, good times. Link to all the channels that I mentioned, also available on betterthanember.com. There's a whole page for other creators, but that's aside. What Brentley says is never forget that their alternative involves a talking snake and a man losing an argument with a fucking donkey.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah, a talking snake, a magic fruit, a mortal sky father that got angry and killed everybody because the things he created didn't do what he wanted. And we see no evidence of this in any of the fossil record, any of the genetic evidence, any of the, you know, none of it. It's fairy tales and imagination. That's all it is. That's all it is. If it were true, we would see the evidence, and we don't.
Yeah, this all present, all powerful, all everything creator being. Have you seen him? I can't seem to find him. For an omnipresent being, he sure is fucking elusive. He must be a ninja. Has anyone asked Jester? Because if anybody can find a ninja, it's another ninja. Oh my goodness. Maya's siding with the god on this one. You know, it's, do you believe in magic? I'm not going to subject you to my singing tonight. My voice is mostly worn out. So yeah, I broadly agree. It's just nuh-uh. It's just argument from incredulity. And it's just because of the requirement to beg the question. Starting from the conclusion and trying to make reality fit. And that's That's why we created the scientific method the way we did, because people's tendency to insert their own preferred conclusions, their own biases into the process makes for unreliable results. It's because of people like Kent that, in a way, led to the evolution of the way we determine the answers for questions to produce the modern, evolved form of the scientific method. It's pretty neat. All right, before we wrap up,
Yes. Yes,
what
that's so
goodies
true.
do you
I had
folks
to
have
laugh.
coming up?
Sorry, I'm just being really cheeky in the chat.
I noticed. I noticed.
And I loved the comment that he made that made me chuckle. It was great.
Oh yeah, trying to.
I don't really have much. I can start. I don't really have much coming up. Donnie had asked me to maybe sit down and do a bit of a more serious discussion on some of these points that were raised. We've had 2 shots at it, and we're still on chromosome fusion 2, and I think we'll probably have a third one. I think he probably wants to set up in the next couple of days, where I hope we finish chromosome fusion 2. And I don't know if you guys want to kind of sit down and kind of listen to the conversation. It is quite trying, to be honest, so I don't blame you if you don't want to. 3.5, 4 hours of just chromosome fusion 2. I will point out to him in our next discussion, basically a point that I've noticed in that Donnie he only focuses on one thing. Like he thinks he finds an error that geneticist hasn't kind of explained, and he'll use that to kind of say, well, the whole thing is not true, and then totally ignoring the fact that there are thousands of similarities that he just won't address. So he'll just focus on this one little thing. And the one thing that he's kind of focusing on the moment is, well, the telomere fusion site on a pig is so different from that on the humans. And ergo, the whole thing on humans can't be a fusion. I think that's so. And my response to that will be, why are you comparing 2 different species? Like, I don't think evolution is expected to be the same. But why don't you address the fact that we've got 2 chromosome 12 and 13, which I think they've renamed it to 2A and 2B, on a chimpanzee that exactly matches the entire chromosome fusion 2. So we've got the banding patterns exactly the same. We've got the telomere fusion sites with pretty much the same CATG repeating pairs. Like, we've got why don't you address the fact that we've got all these similarities, but you focus on the fact that the pig telomere fusion site is so different from the humans, and therefore that invalidates the entire chromosome fusion 2. And it just floors my mind that they just cherry pick this one small piece of data and ignores all the rest that kind of shows it. So I don't know. It's quite frustrating to have that conversation. But if you guys kind of want to see that, it's on my channel, and we'll have a third one. I think that we'll be recording in the next couple of days. So that's what I'm doing, Dr. Ember.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's and Ian's channel is where all of Ian's good works of debate can be found. The past debates with Kent, the other stuff. That's what you can find over there. If you enjoy this show, you can find more stuff like it on Ian's channel.
It's very small. I mean, it's small compared to the kind of debates that Mark has done. So I think I've only done like 6 or 7, or maybe less, 6 maybe. So it's not a lot.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, I don't produce as much content as I would like. We do what we can with the time we have, and as opportunities arise, it's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll always be a friend of the channel, Ian. I have a soft spot in my heart for my fellow southern hemispherist. Sorry to all the flat earthers out there who are going to get really mad. I don't care. Like, I really don't care. But yeah. Always a pleasure, Ian. Always.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mark, what you got coming up this week and or into the future?
I don't know. I've got probably aimbot on my Wednesday or Tuesday night for those of us who are geographically challenged. I also have the debate dissection coming up, and I'll probably have some more content. As you say, it just all depends on time. But I'm trying my best. So that's basically what I've got coming up. I don't think I have anything else on. But I just interviewed this awesome person who they were amazing and had such a good conversation, really interesting. You can find that on my channel. I hope you're putting it up on your channel as well, Ems.
I usually don't. I keep interviews like wherever they started.
Okay.
Maybe I should. I'm
should.
probably silly that way.
You
I don't
should.
know.
I mean, like you should, because even though our audience does overlap, there will be people on your channel that aren't on mine. It's just that's just happens. Or if they missed it on mine, they don't know about it, or come up on your feed. I think it's a good idea. I would like you to. By the way, I interviewed Ember, so that was really good.
Oh, well, who wants
really
to see
good,
that?
really interesting. It was a great conversation. I enjoyed it.
It was. I had a lot of. Well, not so much the first part, because we were dealing with the fallout from the election thing. But I do appreciate having that talk, because I felt better today, having been able to get some of that off my chest. So yeah. It's good, and we do get into some interesting things besides the election fallout stuff and whatnot. But yeah, you do aimbot, you do random interviews, you do fundamentalist fails.
Oh yeah, I
debates.
forgot about that.
Yeah,
fundamentalist fails. I totally forgot about. Thank you. Ember knows my channel better than I do. For some reason, I'm not sure.
I watch it more.
Well, and I really would like to debate more, but creationists, they don't want to debate. They really are running scared. They don't want to step in and actually have a conversation where they debate about things. Well, any non-convicted creationists anyway.
Yeah. Details. And next week, debate review will be back on Mark's channel, so make sure you're subscribed. Fresh new debate. We don't even know what we're gonna do yet, so it'll be a surprise for everyone. But if you enjoy this, make sure you're subscribed to both channels so you can keep up with what's coming in the future. And there's a backlog of the old debates. We've been doing this for over a year. In fact, we're closer to 2 years than the 1 year anniversary at this point. So if you want to see more of this and you don't want to wait, there's a playlist right on my channel page that has the debates from both our channels in one easy-to-use playlist. Hours and hours of content. You can sleep to it. You can clean your room to it. You can write scathing comments about how silly we are for believing in a religion that we can demonstrate is based in reality. Silly beings that we are. That's a thing I never plug. Yeah, there's a playlist for that. So yeah, we hope to see you guys more. We hope to see you in the future. As for me, everything is in flux because my country has turned into shit. But the one thing I can say for sure is tomorrow, Nitty will be on. And who doesn't love a good Nitty? I didn't make up that pun either. That's been going for a long time.
Nitties are always welcome. Nitties absolutely always welcome.
Absolutely. A very, just one of the best humans. Often you can find Nitty and Gather too. Just throwing that out there. Oh goodness. But there's a lot we could say, but that covers most of the bases, I think. So we're at 3 hours. So I will wrap up. Thanks everybody so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thanks for participating in the live chat, keeping things lively.
Can I just say thank you, Dr. Ember, and thank you, Dr. Mark Reid. The first one on Mark's channel, and obviously finishing it off on Ember. I had super fun. It was just wonderful, and yeah, I just loved it. So thank you for the opportunity to kind of come on both your channels and just review this debate.
No, thank you, and it was for coming. Having you on here. Like I always love getting because you can only sit there and sort of say it. Like you can say, oh, what was that person thinking? Why were they doing this? And to have someone on who was there, you actually know what they were trying to do and what their intention was. It's really fantastic. And you're just an amazing, hilarious guy as well. I love hanging out with you. So, my pleasure to have you on my stream. And I'm sure Ember, I'd assume you feel the same.
Oh yeah, this is I love it. This has been so much fun, both weekends. And in a time when I really need shit to make me feel better, I appreciate it very much. So thank you for coming. And to everybody else out there, as always, remember, you don't have to pretend a magic man in the sky convinced a talking snake to lie to a magic woman about a magic fruit, because you are better than religion. Good night.